Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool. So I showed you a VTuber thing.
Yeah.
So.
That you made.
Yeah, I made. So, that, it's not made in Blender because that's a 2D model. So, it's completely 2D.
Really?
Yes.
It doesn't look 2D at all.
Yeah. So.
I was going to say it looked like stiffly 3D, sort of.
Yeah, no, it's completely 2D. That's why it looks stiff.
Weird.
And.
I find 2D stuff looks less stiff typically.
Yeah, well, I also animated it.
Right.
That's my rigging. So, how that was made is, so that was made for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign I was playing with a friend of ours, and my character was this tiny little fairy that would fly around. Kind of a psychopathic, really powerful witch. Anyways, I had a 3D model of a VTuber that I'd used because we were doing it over webcam. So I made that and I was playing with that. I then took that 3D model and using inpainting in 1111, not inpainting, sorry, what was it called? The ControlNet.
Yeah.
So using ControlNet Canny, which is basically, it takes the image,
Right.
It removes all color from the image, it creates a scan outline, and it forces the software to fill that scan outline.
Yeah.
So using Canny, I took a 3D model.
Automatic 1111.
Yeah, automatic 1111. Put it in there, and it produced really bad images. So I then refined my prompts and a whole bunch of stuff to get halfway decent images. Then I took those images, and I redrew over them a bunch of stuff, and did a bunch of inpainting, and got slightly better images. Then I upscaled those images with a bunch of different upscalers, and they all turned out terrible because upscalers cause artificial artifacts to appear which ruin images.
Sometimes. It depends Now, I'm not quite sure if this is just, what do you call it? Placebo. But I think if you do an upscaler during the generation, because that is an option.
Yes, during generation.
It tends to produce better quality images.
Yes.
Yeah.
But these had to be done after the fact because I edited them in Paint software,
right.
Free software.
And you can't do that with an image-to-image or something.
Yeah, so I was doing edits on them, so I got closer and closer to what I wanted because the thing I wanted had is red skin. My goodness, does automatic 1111 hate red skin.
Stable Diffusion.
Yeah, Stable Diffusion hates red skin. Like, trying to give things red skin, it does not work with. The face was also messed up, really messed up, because it was an anime avatar. And I was producing a drawing in a non-anime style. It's like anime adjacent. And if you ever try to make anime look slightly realistic using Stable Diffusion, you figure out how disturbing anime characters actually are in their autonomy with their face and head. So anyways, bunch of work there, upscaling. Then I took the upscales, and I had about 4 different upscales. And I merged them together into which aspects I liked of each part. And then I did a bunch more art and a bunch more basically Photoshop. I would cut the image in half to leave one side so it would be parallel and then copy, flip it over. Of course, I had different colors, so I had to redo that. And so that took a ridiculous amount of work. And then I took that into 3D Cubism, which is a software where you take 2D images that have been cut into pieces. So if I was to remove the eyes on the model I showed you, the model will be one of the thumbnails. I'll do some stuff in there. It has it's not just empty holes. There's a thing behind it. And if you were to remove the face, there'd be the back of the hair there.
Right.
And
So it has layers.
Yeah, so it's multiple layers. And there's lips. So you could remove the lips and then the teeth would be under that. And
So you made an ogre even though it's red.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's multiple layers. That's how you make 2D models. And so then I rigged it, which that was a learning experience of how to do. And I had to do multiple steps with learning to rig it. And that took a lot of work as well. And so the proper tutorial, that 3D Cubism has a tutorial of how to do the rigging. And then, so I rigged the head, and I just was not satisfied with a lot of the rigging of the head. But it was kind of too late at this point. I was watching someone else today, so, alright, this is how I like to rig the head. And how they show, it's why did not the official tutorial show how to do this? Because, for one, it's easier than the official tutorial, how they do their head rigging. And 2, it looks way better. And it's So the next one I make will have the better head rigging. But there are several things with this. So one of the guys I played with used to do art. And he actually used to do art for commission. And I think this part used to do art for commission. And one of the last things he said about it, which kind of ticked me off, is it's really nice. It's nice looking. It's a shame that the model is AI generated.
Yeah, well...
And that kind of, that made me snap for a bit.
Yeah, it's tricky because, well, it seems like, and I'd love to see someone that demonstrated a deep understanding of the AI art.
And then say it's a shame that it's...
Yeah, because most of the people that say that don't realize what goes into
Yeah.
doing something like that. But on the other hand, I was thinking about so in Photoshop you can have like rope brushes. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen them, where like you just kind of draw a line and it makes a rope.
Yeah.
And so you don't draw the rope, the AI does it for you basically.
Yeah.
And this was long before Stable Diffusion exists. You could get like sparkle brushes and like paint has the spray can obviously.
Yeah.
You know what's funny actually is these are, I think, I could be wrong here, but I think Stable Diffusion is based on transformers, which is like a computing technique, not the robots.
Yeah.
And if I'm correct there, transformers are based on rotational matrices, which are incredibly basic arithmetic. So the obviously they're like giant models of like +1 -1 basically.
Yeah.
Because rotate matrices are just ones and zeros for the most part. It's been a while since I did math, but I think that's how they work basically. And then it's just the interaction of the ones and zeros. The whole thing. It's kind of cool how they work. They kind of like chunk along and flip and change as they chunk along. I think the matrix actually has an effect that kind of does that with the lines moving. Although I think that's meant to be binary, not actually a matrix, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But so I guess what I'm getting at is that the spray tool in Paint from like 20 years ago is in a way more complicated because it's using randomness theoretically. Maybe it isn't random, but although there's temperature and Stable Diffusion uses seeds, so I guess that's the randomness there is the seed.
Yeah.
But because I was having a bit of a debate with a guy about that too, and he said, no, I've done a bunch of AI art, and maybe he has, but it didn't, like the stuff he was doing didn't seem to suggest it.
Yeah.
Well, like because people don't realize how deep the rabbit hole goes. They think, oh yeah, I went on to Midjourney and I typed in like 10 prompts. I've done it. It's like no. And it's like, oh, I used a LoRa. It's like no. You can build your own LoRa's. You can use ControlNet. You can, and that's just being good at one aspect of it. That's like learning how to hold a brush.
Yeah.
The other aspect is when to use it, how to use it, combining Photoshop, combining digital painting, combining photography, combining photo bashing.
And then that's not even getting into comfy UI, which you need to have like a deep understanding of coding, basically.
Yeah.
Or not coding, you need to have an understanding of interactive systems, which I've always been really bad at.
Well, the thing, coding makes sense. I can read code, right? Like, I don't know how to code, but I can read code fine for the most part. Like, not really, but I can kind of piece it together. Node-based stuff, which is designed to be easier. It's basically coding, but with spaghetti instead of easy to read lines.
Yeah.
And I don't get it. It
doesn't. Node-based systems really confuse me too.
I don't know which. If there was an arrow point, I don't know which way the noodles are supposed to go.
Yeah.
That's my biggest problem. It's like if you have a nice line with indents, I'm like, okay, the indent that's further in happens after the indent that's closer up, and it all stacks together. But nodes are just this like, okay, this connects to this. What does that mean? Does that mean this one impacts this one, or does this one impact this one? I don't know what it means. I assume that the left side of the node itself is the output, and the right side is the output, and the left side is the input. Yeah. But what are you outputting? Because it doesn't tell me what it's outputting. It doesn't say which variable it's outputting. It's just like, stick it here. And it's, what am I... Yeah, no, I don't like comfy.
But what you're saying, like, there's so many more aspects. Like, as I said, I made the original model of this thing it's based off, which is a 3D model. And I didn't make the 3D model. I used a different software, which gives you a bunch of, starting points. You basically start with a blank slate paper doll, which you can then modify its parameters and paint over. But still, that's like taking a clay model and putting clothing on it. That's art.
So a collage was an art way back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Where you chop up photos and you glue them together.
And that's also involved in this process too.
But so I'm old enough, because I'm not that old, but this was a very recent debate, like 4 years ago, basically. but I remember it more like 8 years ago. And it's been going on for probably more like 30 years. But digital art was considered not real art.
Yes.
For a long time.
I've talked with someone who's a photographer.
Oh, that? Yeah.
And she's basically she's of the mindset, like, one of her ways she made money was producing stock photos. And we were talking and I was showing her all this stuff, and it's just like, well, stock photography is dead because you can generate it and not have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But she's like learning to use this stuff now and figuring out how to apply it. And
yeah, Adobe actually doing something really interesting. They're making they built their own model using completely copyright free, or no, not copyright free, but images they own the copyright to. And now they have their own stock photo generator.
Yeah.
Which, that's someone adapting. They're like,
yeah,
we're going to adapt, and here we go, bam. But I saw this list. It was a compilation of like, digital art isn't real art, photo bashing isn't real art, photography isn't real art, what matte isn't real art. That's where, like in Indiana Jones, for example, you look at this giant warehouse that they go into. What they've actually done is they've taken a glass plate and they've painted a warehouse onto it over the film.
So in Lord of the Rings, in Fellowship of the Ring, there's a scene where it's one of the Starks where they're going through the montage of them traveling, and they go past this old ruin. So that ruin's not there. What they did, it's insane if you think about the process here. So this is a like 3-4 second clip. So that is going to be, how many frames per second was Lord of the Rings? Like,
well, it's 24 is the output, but I don't know what they film it in.
Yeah. So anyways, so let's just go with output.
Yeah.
So 3 times 24. So
yeah. So 72.
Yeah, 72 frames. So they had a guy, because digital tooling wasn't as good as it is now, but it's still, they have this process of he painted an image and the ruins are painted onto that location. And then because it's a panning shot, he had to adjust them ever so slightly for every single frame.
Like the parallax in.
Yeah. And they could digitally do it. Now what you would do is you would paint that ruin there, and then you'd set a key point to lock it to, and then as it panned, it would automatically move with it, and you do a few touch-ups. But the technology they had at that point for video editing, which they developed a lot of this technology as well in Lord of the Rings, is he had to, each digital frame, he actually had to paint it on there. And it's like...
Oh, here's an interesting question.
That's like so much work for that.
What's it called? Overlord? The software they invented to do the battles.
Yeah.
Warlord, Overlord, it's something like that.
Yeah.
There was no human mind behind where the units were and how they were attacking. There was no human that chose every aspect of that, because they invented a war game, basically like an RTS, a very rudimentary RTS, and then they just simulated the fights.
Yeah.
And so those are CG renders of simulated fights.
It's more than that, though, those fights. Those fights are actually insane. So it's CG renders of those fights. Then the foreground is actual coordinated actors fighting. Then what they did is they took frames from those coordinated actors fighting. And so let's say you have like an orc fighting one man.
Yeah.
You then remove that man, take another man that's fighting a different orc. You put that further in the background. Then after all of that is done, so you basically you do that for about 50% of them. They then CG painted over a lot of things because the software wasn't 100% in what it could do. And so they recorrected all those scenes.
But its core was just an AI making all the decisions. There's no real art behind it, right?
Yeah.
But would people say The Lord of the Rings aren't an artistic film?
Well, you weren't here when I was talking to Mom about this. Sargent, that guy who painted that 2-year-long painting.
Yeah.
So I was doing some research on him, and there's these artists today who are talking about, it's a shame he was born when he was born. If he was born 50 years earlier, he would have been considered one of the greatest artists in the world. If he was born 50 years later, he'd be considered one of the greatest artists in the world. And why that is he was an amazing artist. He had technique, he had ideas, he had really interesting things. He had dedication, he had insane dedication. And people loved his work. But he was a portrait painter. And he was really good at portrait painting. You want a portrait painted? You go to Sargent. He can charge you a lot because he's the best in the world at it. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as popular 50 years earlier. So as 50 years earlier, Sargent would have painted not portraits. So he would have had creativity. He would have had the freedom to do stuff and do more things. 50 years later, charcoal portraits were a lot more popular than painted portraits. They stopped doing painted portraits. So again, Sargent would have had the freedom to try to do different paintings. Now, maybe he would have not gotten paid as much and made as good as a living. But it's the sort of case of, he was painting people as they were. He wasn't doing anything more to that scene. And even then, people don't consider Sargent a very good... A lot of people don't consider him a very good artist because, like, oh, he's just painting people the way they were. He's just painting a scene. It's like, he's painting what he saw. He had no creativity.
So there's a... This is a fairly...
that goes even further. It's portrait painting art.
This isn't photography, but it uses a camera. And by camera, I mean a camera obscura, like a dark room. Or maybe it just uses a mirror, but I think it does use a camera obscura. And this is a fairly old drawing technique. You would point your mirror or camera obscura at an object.
Camera lucida is what it's called.
And it would project a thing onto your sheet of paper, and then you just trace over.
Yeah, that's called a camera lucida.
Oh, okay. So it's like a combination of a mirror and a camera, sort of?
Yeah, you know overhead projectors?
Yeah.
They're basically an overhead projector.
But it's like a reverse overhead projector.
Yeah, it's a reverse overhead projector.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was something that was...
the camera lucida, it was used by animators as well. Like,
I'm sure rotoscoping and stuff too would probably be useful. But, and so you say, is that art? So rotoscoping, the guy that made the Lord of the Rings, Bakshi was his name? Or Ralph Bakshi, was that him?
Yeah.
The animated Lord of the Rings, all that rotoscoping. He doesn't like rotoscoping. He didn't believe it was proper, real animating or art. But he had a time limit and budget limit, so he's like, which doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't know much about animating, but it seems to me it'd be way easier to animate than to rotoscope, because to rotoscope, you have to have everyone act everything out, so you have to make an entire movie, and then you have to draw over every frame of that movie, where it seems like it'd be much quicker to just either act out the entire movie or draw everything, not do both. Because that seems like it'd be twice as much work, but I don't know.
Well, so if it was one person, then it'd be different. But basically what you do is you go, okay, here's the art we're going to do. Then you have 20 people or 30 people.
Right, so it's much easier to do it in parallel with rotoscoping?
Yeah, it's much easier to do in parallel. So basically you have...
because you don't need consistent style. You don't have to worry about all your animators being on the same page.
Yeah.
You just say, rotoscope this, because it'll look the same even if you...
Yeah, draw over Galadriel. Her hair is yellow, her skin is pink, her lips are red, and her dress is like a light purple.
Have you seen this scene from... I don't know... I believe they did everything in one take for some reason. Yeah. But it's an animation that was done in one take. So there's some really stupid scenes. Like, I don't know if you saw one where... It's the scene where the hobbits have been taken to Isengard.
Aragorn trips over his sword.
And Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas are running through an empty field, and they're like saloming through this empty field, dodging invisible obstacles.
Yeah.
And then they come to a high cliff, and Aragorn trips and
on
falls.
his sword. Yeah.
And the whole thing's animated for some reason, and then it cuts, and it's just like a new scene. And it's, why did you animate Aragorn tripping? Why didn't you go to the actor and be like, can you just...
Well, again, limited budget, so it's not digital. They were working with film, and so they actually only had so much film that they could film the whole movie with.
Why didn't they end the scene early? It's just so... It's like, okay. And then did they send it to a Foley guy, and they're like, all right, he's falling down, just make a falling down. I don't actually know. Did they dub over it, or is it just voice acted the first time around?
Voice acted the first time around.
That is such a weird...
There was... Like, older...
Do they just have, like, the original film somewhere? That'd be amazing to watch.
Honestly, it would be quite fun to watch.
I think I've seen footage of the Balrog. It was, like, a dude with, like, sponges coming out of him and, like, this big mop. And
oh, that would be fun to watch. It's insane, older movies, like, the amount of technology we've developed. Because one of the things...
Well, that's what I love about learning about the history of, like, any movie made before, like, I don't know, the 80s. Yeah. It's like every movie... wasn't just, okay, we're going to stick a camera at something and we're going to go. It's like, we have to invent 6 new technologies to make this work.
Well, so the Dracula movie I talked about. So I want to contrast it versus Lord of the Rings. Several things Lord of the Rings, because I watched the first 2 Lord of the Rings movie. So Dracula movie, they have no background music. There's very long takes. So scenes are like...
Was the Dracula movie supposed to have a guy in the theater playing the piano, do you think? Or...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That probably actually was it. Is there's a guy probably playing music. But so the movie's going along, and it's not a silent movie. Like, there's talking, there's acting, but it's built like stages in a play. So like, they built full sets, and so they use the sets they built. So they have like several big sets, and they constantly went back to those sets. And it's long takes, not a huge amount of cuttings, different angles, doing different things. And so I don't know how many cuts there are, but let's say there is maybe 200 cuts in this movie. And you compare that to Lord of the Rings.
There's
Thousands of cuts.
Yeah.
And, like, there's so many insane details for short cuts in Lord of the Rings, but you think about filming that versus the other two. I would much prefer to be in the Dracula movie than the Lord of the Rings movie as an actor, because I actually get to pretend to be in the scene and play it, instead of in Lord of the Rings, like, all right, so we're going to film this scene, and then we're going to film this scene. Now, I say that, however, Lord of the Rings is they had several different cameras, and they would actually run a whole scene, and then they do it several times with different cuts, and sometimes, like Lord of the Rings, they've stopped doing this as much in newer movies, but Lord of the Rings and older movies like that era, what they would do is, even if they were going to cut out of the scene, they'd actually write more into that scene than there was, so the actors could act it more and feel more in it and be part of it.
So I've made a movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've probably made some stuff for your media class too, I imagine.
Yeah.
But the advantage of the lots of cuts is the actors don't have, like, if you're in a theater production, you have to memorize a script.
Yeah.
For a movie, you don't have to memorize a script.
Yeah.
So there's a huge advantage to it, because the actor can just show up and so what actors do a lot with method acting is they say, I am this person, so I'm just given this line. How would this person read that line? So it's a lot quicker in that sense. But I've seen clips of, like, Dancing in the Rain, that old movie, and they do these amazing dance scenes that are like 10 minutes long, and it's all one take where they're panning through an entire house, and they have like just cutaway walls so that the camera can go and watch them walk from room to room, and so you feel like you're watching a play more than a movie in some sense. But on the other hand, it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Like there is some artistry to how it's like a American versus Chinese martial arts films.
Yeah.
Where the martial arts fights in Chinese movies, the camera just sits still and you watch like a 10-minute fight and you're like, wow. Whereas the American ones, the good ones, like John Wick, have tons of cuts, so they do like a cool scene every 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's good, but then you get like the lazy ones like Jason Bourne, where they just sort of shake the camera rapidly, so you can't see what's actually going on.
One of the things that I've talked about this before, but what I love about Asian movies versus our movies is, so what you'll do, and this is partly for actor safety and like the no experienced martial arts, is you will punch, cut, and then show the reel from the hit.
Yeah.
And so the context never there. What Chinese movies do...
You're speaking faster than you're speaking.
Right.
Whatever that...
Yes. What Chinese movies do is they punch, show the impact. Cut, show the impact. Cut, show the impact in the reel.
Yeah.
And so you get to see the hit 3 times. And it's very subtle, quick cutting there, but it makes you feel that hit. And so, like, that's so different than the American method. So one of the other things I noticed with Lord of the Rings is Gollum looks a lot more hideous to me now, and so do Treebeard when he's talking. Mm-hmm. And one of that is I've done face rigging now, and actually created my own face rig.
Wasn't Treebeard a robot?
He was a robot with CG put on top for his face.
Oh, okay.
But looking at Gollum, understanding how that works now, it makes it look a lot worse, because it's... Maybe they did it differently, but what I see is he opens his mouth, so it opens his mouth a certain way. So probably what they did is they did very early rigging on his face, and so it's a very loose model that was reactive, and then they did art over that every single time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. But just looking at that, I can sort of see how it's animated and stuff, and it makes it look a little worse. It's one of those things, like, once you know how the art's slightly done, it can sometimes spoil it.
And sometimes you can be like, wow.
Yeah, no, there's definitely that wow practical side of me, but it's also like, all of them doesn't
it depends
look as
on,
good.
yeah, it depends on the results.
Yeah, it's the 2 layers for me.
Yeah.
Of like, wow, they did that with that technology at that time, but it's also like, ooh. And I wonder if I watch other movies that will do this now, I'll go like, oh, like if I was to watch Avatar, the Avatar movie with the big blue cats.
Well, it's funny, like I watch a lot of these game review channels, and a lot of them they do these essays about how being a video essayist has ruined games for me because I have to turn off my brain to play now. Because otherwise, and so they ask their audience, like, what percentage of time are you criticizing the game, and what percentage of time are you just enjoying the game and really into it and you're flowing with it? And now what's interesting is the people whose opinion I respect the most about video games, Never Knows Best and Matthew Matosis, have never made one of these essays. And I think the reason is that they probably were never in a state of, oh, I just turn off my brain and do this. You're always like tearing it apart. But the thing about I'm a person who is always tearing something apart, right? And so my respect is probably because they're more similar to me in a way too, right? But the thing about that is that doesn't lessen it for me. I go like, wow, that is brilliant. That's a great choice right there.
Well, and two reviewers which I respect the most, they're some of the most popular video game reviewers out there, are Mandalore and Seth.
Yeah, they're quite good too, yeah.
They only review games that they enjoy, or it's not they enjoy, but they have opinions of, and it's not a video game reviewer of like all these little things. It's, I played this game a lot, and here's my thoughts on it.
And Seth, like, he uses cheat engine like crazy, and he literally tears the games apart.
Yeah.
Down to the code, but he loves them for it all the same, because he loves everything that you can do within them. Like, if you look at how he played, and not even cheat engine, he looks for exploits like in Songs of Conquest and Here's Might and Magic. Yeah. He talks about how you can break these games horribly and how it's amazing, and how Heroes of Might and Magic 3 competitively is just a game of who can wreck the game mechanics more, one person or the other. Just side tangent quickly for Heroes 3. I saw a fight where a guy used, it was like 50 Cyclops and 7 Archdevils to defeat like 10,000 Archdevils and 10,000 Pit Lords and like...
How do you defeat Archdevils? They can teleport.
So,
because I know the strategy of what you use Archdevils to do is you teleport them around the map. And because of their low health and high value and damage, they're a priority target.
Yeah, so...
But if you're doing that against flying units or units that are really fast, it kind of breaks.
This was a guy showing complete mastery of the AI, basically. So what happened? So it was basically, he was fighting a, let's say, I don't know, 40-week army of Inferno with his tiny army.
Yeah.
So he sent all his Archdevils forward. And because he put one in each, so he had 6 Archdevils, one in each stack. And so the enemy army targeted them first because they were the biggest threat, and killed them all. So they rushed forward and killed them all. Like their Hellhounds ran forward, and their Magogs ran forward, and all that sort of thing. And while they were killing them, he used that turn to cast Forgetfulness on their Gogs. They had Gogs, not Magogs, sorry. So he cast Forgetfulness on their Gogs. And then, on the second round, he went first. So in the second round, I guess the Archdevils of his opponent went first. They killed his last Archdevil.
Yeah.
And he teleported his Cyclops over beside the enemy's ammo cart.
Yeah.
And then the enemy sent the Harpy, because he had Harpies in his stack, to stand beside, because it would die if it attacked the Cyclops, but it blocked them. So it stood beside them to block them, but it couldn't attack them where it would die, right? Yeah. So it put the Harpies right next to his Cyclops stack. And so now, the only 2 stacks you could attack him from had a Harpy in one and the ammo card in the other. So they were both allied stacks. So the Cyclops was now safe as long as it didn't do anything. And then he used spells and his Cyclops to lower the Magogs down until there was about 50 of them. Down from like 10,000.
Yeah.
And then he cast Hypnotize on them. And then the AI started resurrecting the Magogs. And because Hypnotize only works on very small stacks, right?
Yeah.
So he hypnotized a tiny stack of Magogs. And then he started damaging... And while he was doing this, he was damaging the Cerebus so that the Cerebus would also be resurrected. So he could damage the Cerebus faster than they could get resurrected. And so it was targeting the Cerebus because they're worth more. And then he was slowly chipping on the Magogs. Then he hypnotized the Magogs. And then he waited for the AI to resurrect the Magogs back to a full stack. And at that point, Forgetfulness wore off. And now he had a full stack of Magogs that the enemy wouldn't attack. And they had an ammo cart, so they had unlimited ammo. And then he killed the entire enemy's army with their own Magogs, and like 10,000 of them. And so what I'm getting at is Heroes of Might and Magic is a complex enough game. You can do stuff that you would never, like, it's like infinite potential. It's amazing the depth of like the tiny edge cases. It has tons of these moments where you go, wait a minute, I can do this.
Yeah. Like,
it would never work most of the time. You're like, wait, okay, it was just Week of the Gremlins. There's 5 gremlins there. If I attack the gremlins with my stack of 10 Archangels and surrender, then I can then I can hire my hero back on the other side of the map, and then I can, like, there's all these moments of like, wait, I've got a really dumb idea. That's a more common one, but like Seth said, there's a reason that there's a art of war written for the game, like this 300-page thing called Tribute to Strategists. Now, what I didn't realize, that's the English version, right? There is, I think it's Polish or Russian, 500-page book. Yeah. And this one does stuff like, here's the hexadecimal code for each building, here's the hexadecimal code for each ability, this is how you edit them. Yeah. And the information in that one is amazing. But from the...
it's all in Cyrillic, so it's not legible.
Well, there's a guy that he would just translate snippets of it on Heroes Community, and I was reading them like, this is amazing stuff. But the entire document, it's PDF, so it's hard to translate it over. Yeah. But it's incredible. And so going back to AI art, I guess. I mean, that's the art of abusing AI right there. But, so I'm talking about all these things, and you're talking about all these things, like the map painting and rotoscoping, and then, okay, so my problem with the rope tool, let's say, is that it feels wrong, because you're not making that rope, right?
Yeah.
So, well, what is my problem there? It's like, you're not making the decisions of the rope, maybe, let's say? Okay, so then you go to... But you say, well, if I don't get the rope I want, I redo it, and I do it until it is the rope I made. It's like, yeah, but you don't know how to make a rope. You use the rope tool. And it's like, I know how to make so spell checkers for me when I write, I know how to spell the words, but it's faster if I type and use the spell checker, right?
Yeah.
To a degree. And I can learn words with the spell checker. So is there less art there? Because I don't care about being really good at spelling. I want to be really good at writing.
So on that rope tool, even, if you go and watch a Bob Ross video. So Bob Ross paints these amazing...
Actually, that's where I was going, was happy little accidents.
Yeah, but
you don't choose the outcome.
Yeah, it's not even choosing the outcome, though, but like what I'm getting to with Bob Ross is he paints amazing scenery. And his whole thing is paint with Bob Ross. You can paint who anyone can paint. Anyone can do art. And he's an amazing artist. But he knows techniques that he can teach you in a television program, which makes a beautiful piece of art. One of the things that stuck with our art teacher from Bob Ross videos is you take your painter's knife and you load it with paint. So you put some gray on it, you put some black on it, you put a bunch of white on it, different colors.
You just have a cloud or something?
No, it's not a cloud. Cloud technique's different. I'll get to that. And then you draw one line down, and then another line down. You have a mountain.
Like a mountain, yeah.
Yeah, you have a mountain. You have an amazing looking mountain. It's a gorgeous mountain.
You got the exposed rock, and you got the snow. And
something's not quite right. You load a little bit more black. You can get a sheer cliff with it. You want some more snow. You put a little thin piece of white. You do it all along the ridge of the top. Boom, you got a mountain. Beautiful mountains. Really hard to make if you're just using a normal brush. And it's like, okay, I'm going to paint this. I'm going to use a brush. But you can get mountains super fast. Clouds. Clouds are a nightmare to deal with a paintbrush. What you do for clouds is you take a sponge, you wet out the water, you put into whatever paint you want, and then you go tap, 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 tap. Then you, alright, you want it to be a sunrise, you get some yellow, tap, 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 tap. Then you get some orange, tap, 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 tap,
okay,
tap, tap, tap. And so it creates puffy layer upon puffy layer, and it generates a cloud. But that's not, like, you can do that with a paintbrush, but it's it's faster and easier, and it gives just as good a result to use that. And there's just... Bob Ross has so many techniques like that in his videos.
Okay, so here might be the criticism then. Because the guy I was talking to, he said AI art is art, but people that make AI art are not artists.
Yeah.
So here is because he said you'd be blind to say that this doesn't look good. A lot of the stuff looks amazing. Okay, so here's trying to steel man his position, right? Bob Ross is not teaching you how to be an artist.
He's teaching you how to make art?
He's teaching you how to be Bob Ross. An artist is someone that develops their own techniques for solving the problems that they come across. But Bob Ross is handing you the tools. However, then that says, okay, you can't take any art class whatsoever because every teacher is handing you their tools. But you could say, yes, but you go to a bunch of teachers and you take what tools from them you can. But then you say, okay, but I'm using what of Bob Ross's I like and still using my own techniques. And then I'm taking from this other guy and I'm using his stuff. And Bob Ross's show had other artists on.
Yeah, his son was on actually quite often.
But he had like artists that used wildly different techniques. Like he had a dude that weirdest painter ever. He's like this hideous hunched over guy, like and he just sort of glared at the canvas and spattered paint onto it until he had like a portrait of a woman.
Yeah.
And And he used like weird colors. It was like pink and green,
Yeah.
but then it was garish, the end result, but it was like this, in its own way, magnificent portrait of a woman.
Well, one of the techniques that our teacher taught us, which I always thought was strange, is he had a bunch of toothbrushes in his art class. And what you would do is you dip the toothbrush into white paint, then you put your thumb against it and you just run it along and you shoot at a black background, and that's how you made stars.
Ah.
And so there'd be bigger blobs, because sometimes bigger blob would flick off, that'd be a bigger star, and then you could like go in and do a little bit more detail on the bigger blob, but that's how you did stars, is you just go...
So at what point...
Paintbrush is like made out of wood that I was doing there.
So what point is okay, this is my Bob Ross cloud technique, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what degree of artists say that's... Like, I know a lot of people look down on Bob Ross because he's making art, like, easy and dumb and simplistic, and you're not real artists, you're just following paint by numbers, right? Like, yeah, so is paint by numbers art, I guess, is a question, too. And then is... So let's say... Okay, let's do it both ways. Let's say you agree that using Bob Ross's techniques, just a little bit in your tool belt, right? That's okay. Like, you do the paint thing, right? And so then you say, okay, now my technique for making clouds is I go outside, I take a picture of a cloud, I put it into Art Rage, and then I use the Convert to Paint tool. Well, no, not Convert to Paint, but the Trace tool, whatever it is. It's basically the digital version of the camera Lithuania.
Lucida, sorry.
Lucida.
Yeah.
It's basically the digital version of the camera Lucida. And then I take the oil paintbrush and I swirl it around using the color match. And I get a different cloud, but I was using that cloud as a base, right? So that's my technique I developed, let's say. I haven't ever done this, but it would work for painting a cloud. And then I copy paste that cloud into my picture, bam. Yeah. Because I'm on a digital thing, let's say. And then I print it off and I slap it on a canvas. And I have this collage made of digital art. And then I paint over it with my oil paints. You know, maybe that's my technique for getting a cloud. Is that one... me developing my own technique, or is that some step too far? Or because I personally think there is, like, I've done a lot of the I don't know what it's called, it's like it is photo bashing, but it's also painting over photo bashing, which I guess is part of photo bashing.
Yeah.
And there is a feeling I get, I don't feel great about them. People say, oh, that looks great. I'm like, I don't know, I didn't really, I just kind of turned my brain off and did it, right?
Nope.
Like I had to learn, I have to know which direction to stroke the brush in and maybe make color choices and brush width choices, but I'm making far less choices than if I did a painting by.
Well, let me explain. That's one of the major techniques I use as well, is I faux bash and then paint over it.
Yeah.
And so for me, what it is I have idea of what I want. So one of my images I made is of the character Lorthorn, the Dryad, and she's holding a bone in one hand, and there's a wolf next to her, and she's holding a parasol in the other, and it's over her head. So, I know what Lorthorn looks like. So, and I know the pose. I want her holding a bone, I want her having a parasol. So I went and found base model of a woman in her underwear. And so I put that up. Arms in the wrong position, so I go find a hand holding, in the right position, holding something. Then it's alright, I got that there. Now I need a big old bone, so I find a juicy bone, put it in the hand. And I need someone holding a parasol. So I look through a bunch of images of people holding parasols. Okay, that image of a parasol, that works. And then the hand doesn't quite work, so I have to adjust the hand. And then the face isn't the right face. So I go and I find a face, I put that over there. So I have the thing set up, and it's this nightmarish looking creature. And then I put the wolf in next to it. And it's the image I wanted. It's the image I have in my head. The goal is to get the image in my head out. So I have it there. Then I draw over it. And I have the image I wanted. And so I created the image I want. I feel pretty good because I put some work into it. It's like artwork and it's like all the steps along the way. And it made the image I wanted. Now, you could say that's not as true as art form as just drawing Lorthorn in that pose. Someone could do that. A better artist. However, that artist had to learn. They had to go through techniques. Some people, they have the little wooden stand dummy and they like pose them. Then they draw based on the pose. They use the camera Lucida to get that. And so they draw it using that, or someone's really good at form art because they've practiced 1,000 pieces of form art, and so it's basically the same thing. It's just they have the practice of doing it, so they can draw a figure.
But then doesn't that suggest something? Like they put the work in? Like, doesn't that suggest, well, maybe an artist is measured by what happens the more of their tools you remove. So you stick to artists you stick two artists in quotation marks. You stick two people in a room with every possible tool they could ever dream of. And then you say, make a picture of an apple tree. And so they both make their picture. And okay, we're taking out stable diffusion. Now make a picture. And then, oh, this one falls in quality, this one doesn't. And then you're like, okay, we're getting rid of the rope tool. And then it's like, dang it, my apple tree.
So my art class, I took a Objects in 3D Space class. And this was basically a class on how to make sculptures. And it was making sculptures in interesting manner. So what the teacher wanted to do is he would give us a challenge and we'd have to complete the challenge. And so the very first, or one of the first things he had us do is he said, all right, we have, this is the wood shop and metal shop, like it's the two combined. I want you to make me a cube out of wood. And the cube has to be equal length on all sides. And it has to be smaller than a foot, or like a foot or smaller, basically cubed. It has to be larger than 9 inches cubed.
Right.
Now, you are only allowed to use wood that you find outside or in the scrap pile here that all the other wood students have used. That's the only wood you're allowed to use to make this. Go ahead and do it. You have this amount of time to get it done. And you have like free reign to go into the wood shop, use all the tools. You can use the wood glue, you can use the saws, you can use all that. And so with this class, I felt like I did something very different than a lot of other people, which is I took pieces of wood that were like terrible shape, and I basically glued them together and then milled the glued down pieces of wood into basically proper lengths to create a cube.
Right.
And so I glued together, and so I had a cube that was very practical, very straightforward. And we did our presentation day. Other people had their cubes, and like someone like just took scrap wood and they glued it over and over again, so it made like the shape of a cube. It wasn't complete on one side, so it was like hollowed out. And like there's all these different techniques, very artistic. And the art teacher, he's been there for like years upon years. He's a very well regarded teacher at that school and artist in the community. He loved my piece. He absolutely loved it. And when I was looking at everyone else in mine, I was like, I completed the assignment. I did what he wanted, so I felt good about that. But I was like, mine felt more of a like craftsman, like, all right, I'm making a cube, all right, let's make a cube. And a lot of other people's stuff looked like pieces of art, whereas mine was a cube. But the teacher loved it, and he was like going over like all the different pieces of wood you've put into it, because it had to use different colors of wood, because I was limited by that. It's like different things interacting with each other and all the different shapes, and like how it's hollow, because it would have been too much work to make a solid cube. So like, he just had so much love for this piece of art, and he saw it as an absolute great piece of art that like was artistically made.
So,
and I saw it as a practical project.
Right, but that would suggest that AI art isn't art, right? That, or rather, that AI artists aren't artists, because the end result might be artistic, but the creation process wasn't.
Well, there's still a creative process, I think.
But you keep coming back to like, this person had to study for 1,000 hours, but I didn't have to at all. And then you go to, I just made it an engineering project and just sort of bashed it together, done, right? It's almost like an ends versus means. Like I've got this I had this artistic end, and that's what I wanted, versus I had this artistic means. So this was interesting actually, because this is the opposite of how you've done the opposite before, let's say. So we had a talent show, us and our stepsisters. And so I believe one of our stepsisters did a front flip off the swings. Another one did like a monkey bar thing, or like walked on the monkey bar, something like that. I don't remember what I did. You went across the monkey bars with your legs at like a 90-degree angle or something like that. Like you were holding onto the monkey bars with your hands, and then you had your legs lifted up at some awkward angle and you went across the monkey bars. It was something like that. I don't remember the specifics. It was something that was difficult to do. Like it was very difficult to do, and it looked really boring.
Yeah.
And we all voted on, I think, the front flip or something. And you were like, what? No, this thing's way cooler. And you and the stepsisters were arguing. And I don't remember if I said at the time. I think I did. I said, like, Connor's thing was probably the hardest to do, and there's like a lot of skill in that. But for a talent show, it matters what you do. Like, it matters what the audience sees, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. And if I said all that, was I like the wise guardian of their siblings?
No.
I'm not saying I was correct there. But but the fact that I was saying that at that time is kind of interesting. Anyways, so is that there's a question in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Or so
You see why I'm bringing them up, I guess, at least. Yeah.
And so I'm going to now defend my position of what I was saying there, of you saying that there's the ends there. And what the art teacher pointed out with that, I even said that to him. And he said, art is derived from creativity. Like, you need to be creative to make art. There's a lot of different steps with art. So, you know how an author writes a book. And there's the authors who, this is the plan laid out, I'm going to write that down. And there's the authors who go and see what happens. They don't know where it's going.
This is why I brought up the talent show. With your author example, right?
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings would not be a better book if I learned that Tolkien had weighted keys that required a pound of force to press down each time. But that does not mean that there wasn't artistry in either example.
Well,
but you're pointless. You came to the solution faster, but that does not mean the other people taking the slow route, their pointless suffering does not add to the quality of their art. Like, just because being slower doesn't make you better necessarily. Maybe, okay, but finish it.
So, he's saying you have to have creativity to do what I did with those blocks, because that was the problem solving. And there's an art in that way of thinking in itself, of this very straightforward creating something.
Like that scene in that spy movie with Mr. Bean. The second one where the guy's doing all this crazy parkour and Mr. Bean's just walking in a straight line and catching
opening
up
up doors that are blocked and that sort of thing, using the elevator.
And that's showing his knowledge and wisdom. Yeah. And there was an art in learning that you don't have to do things the hard way. Yeah.
And so there's different processes and different ways to approach the art. Like, I'm certain you've used Stable Diffusion. Like, you were showing me you're trying to make that girl with like all the different things. Like, you're doing the different prompts, and it's like you wanted to do, you're having a problem with something, and so I told you, like, say, put feet into the prompt, and then it'll force it to be a full profile of her because it has to show her feet.
Yeah, but I don't remember the image, but vaguely rings a bell.
Yeah, but it was kind of like discussing
trying to make something for FootWiki or something.
No, the feet were there so it would be forced to produce a full portrait of a person.
Yeah.
Instead of like just showing the upper body.
I was trying to make a like a Nazi commissar. I think that was it, right? Was that the one?
No, that wasn't it. It's just like a girl sitting in a pasture with like a dress.
Oh yeah, leaning back. Yeah, okay, that one. Not the one with the like Hugo Boss.
Yeah. I don't think I ever saw that one.
No, you did.
Okay, but anyways,
I was joking around with you. That's why I made it.
Okay, so
just joke, guys.
Don't
take my Nazi waifu away from
me. The process of doing that sort of thing of like,
I got a rig commission for it.
I understand why rigging commissions are so expensive now.
Just because you're disgusted by them.
Like, no, it is nightmarish to do.
That's your waifu? I'm adding a $500 surcharge for that. Come on. If this was, if it was Samus or Zelda, sure, it'd be a $20 job. But no, like Fiona in ogre form from Shrek, no, $500 surcharge.
Oh, God. My current employment has ruined my perspective of money. Well,
some of these things cost like thousands.
Yeah. So with that was just like you were very early into Stable Diffusions at that point.
Yeah.
And even then it was...
And that was before ControlNet was...
Yeah, that was before ControlNet. And honestly, ControlNet adds a lot of art to it, I think, in some ways, like depending on how you use ControlNet. But also inpainting adds a huge amount of the art. Because that was before you were even, like, you were just trying to produce images based off prompts. You weren't going and then inpainting and saying, switch this up, like, change the color here.
Yeah.
And there's a certain, like, it's weird. It's definitely a different kind of art because...
Well, I wasn't even trying to make art. I was just trying to see what happened if I typed words into the machine.
See what happened, yeah. So, there is,
intention, I think.
Yeah, there's intention, but there's an archaic art form in prompt engineering, whatever it's called. Like, there's actually an archaic art form in prompt engineering of very shamanistic, praying to the machine spirits, and, like, learning your own flavor of prompts. So there's this guy on YouTube who does a lot of art. He's this Swedish man. I think his name's Sven.
Okay.
No, he's Polish. And he has these negative prompt packed and a positive prompt packed. And so one of them's like his oil painting prompts packed. Pack, yeah.
Okay. Not like a vow he's made with the AI machine god.
I mean, it might as well be that. And he says you can get them for free, but he links you to his Patreon. I haven't been able to find them for free. You have to like use Patreon. Anyways, that's this whole other little complaint. Sven, that's his name, Sven, yeah. But he has these things like, you want to do oil painting, you put this thing in there, and then this is my natural negatives prompt. And you just always put that in, and it has like a bunch of negatives that will always be there. I have a folder on my computer, which is just a bunch of note documents, which just have lists of prompts in them. And I can take those, throw them in, and then I edit them later on. And so it's like my palette that I take and I put in there. And this is like things I've learned over time to put in there, the chants to the machine spirits. And so like there's this weird artistry in there of learning to and then which works in which models, and learning which like to understand it, like in the general SD model versus like the Dungeons and Dragons model or the anime model, like learning which prompts work in there, putting them there. So there's that step, and then there's like getting the right size. So that, like this is technical artistry. This point, and then you go and you take that and you put into the in-painting, and you do a bunch of in-painting on it. And so you do some in-painting work, and you're like, okay, I need that to be the right thing. I need the hair to look like this. And then you can use like color in-painting and sketches. So you do the in-painting. Then we're not going to even go to photo bashing and bringing it into Photoshop. I'm just going to leave it. We're only playing with Automatic 1111. So it's a very different kind of art that does produce a result. And it's weird because some people's like, I will make an image and that's the image I'll get. And then boom, this is beautiful art. But some people have, I want a cyberpunk scene where a guy's eating some noodles and there's this other guy who's like firing lasers. And so you have this image that you want, and you're only going to be using ControlNet to do it because you have no photoshopping skill whatsoever. Like you can use MS Paint basically, that's like your art skill. And so you do MS Paint for your ControlNet. So you have your MS Paint ControlNet, or you are a little more advanced and you use that posing art site and you produce the dot art layout of ControlNet, the actual, whatever it's called.
Open pose.
Yeah, you use some open pose stuff. And so you have your guy sitting there in the open pose, and then you sticking the things together.
I couldn't say the word enunciation. Thank you.
You don't have to say enunciation, even if you just do this.
Okay. Yeah, if you will have a better way for me to say it, please do.
Just don't say it. Just symbolize it.
Because I feel like a jerk every time I say it.
Just symbolize it. And I caught on to it before that. There.
Okay.
But it detracts from the statements, even though I'm not understandable. It's easier to do a hand sign.
Okay. And yeah, I do apologize for that. And you don't mind it? So if I just do like this, you don't mind? Like,
yeah, you can just do that.
Okay.
That's what our conductor did, actually. She would do things like she'd do this or like this. Like she'd point to her face and make us make facial expressions while we're singing to influence things.
Can I like improv a bit?
Anyways, okay. So the ControlNet whole thing, so you're purely using that. It's a very different form of art, but if you're looking to produce an image, that's the difference, I think. Is people who are putting in prompts and seeing what they get. And they're looking at the chaos. So they put in things and they take the chaos and they take their favorite from among the chaos.
It's like a loot box.
Yeah. And it's something you can steer. You're steering a ship, but you're steering into the void. Basically, you're in your Black Fortress, your Warhammer ship, whatever. And you're flying along and you let your Geller field drop. But you're a really powerful psyker. And so you have control over what the demons do. But you're just suggesting the shapes they take, but you're not directing anything. And so that is what I think a lot of people see when you talk about AI art, is the person who's looking at chaos and they're snatching just images from the chaos and they're like, this is the thing here. And then there's the people who are actually creating something, and maybe they will embrace the chaos a little bit as well, like Bob Ross, Happy Little Accident. They take a little bit of that chaos and they embrace it. Like, oh, it did that thing with the hand that I never thought doing. Okay, I'll incorporate it. I'll leave that there because that's really cool. And that happens in art sometimes. Like, you slip with your hand and it creates this line. It's like, oh, that's ruined the painting. Let's work with that.
Yeah. So I just had a thought, like, with what you were saying. Instead of going with the Geller field, you could say, imagine two photographers, right?
Yeah.
and they want to take a picture of a bunny, let's say. And so one takes 10 pictures, and they choose the best one, and they're like, this is the one. The other one just sets their camera to continuous photo-taking mode, and they take like 10,000 photos of this rabbit, and then they spend like 3 days just going through them, and they find the one. And they're about the same, the final 2 pictures that are chosen. And you say, well, the guy that knew what he was doing only needed to take 10, so he's the better artist, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the example I was going to say. But then I thought, wait a minute, because that's kind of like your Gellerfield idea.
Yeah.
But then I thought, wait a minute. How did the one dude who took 10,000 photos know which photo was best?
Yeah.
Because you have to know what looks good. Like, if you're some plebe, uneducated, then you have no idea what a good photo is. And so there is actually an artistry in just knowing what a good photo is.
Yeah, so
in the first place, what is compelling.
One of the weirdest things I ever encountered with a photographer. There's a photographer in our town who's a bit of a wizard. He can teleport. He if you don't notice him, you don't notice him. That's kind of an obvious statement, but it's literally he's invisible unless you know to look for him. And then you see him and you realize he's there. Anyways, I was at an event with him, and he wasn't taking pictures at this event. We were playing Go. He's a really good Go player. And so it's just part of a Go club. And then we left the cafe we were playing Go at. And it was nighttime, and there'd been a fresh rain. And there was a street lamp that was causing this interesting reflection in one of the puddles. And we're like, oh, just walk on, we're leaving. He stops, takes out his professional camera, crouches down incredibly low to the ground, gets a good angle, and takes a picture of it. Now, he's a photographer for the news.
Does he just saw the art in the...
Yeah, he just stopped, and he took the picture, and he got the angle that would create it even better art. But, like, he just did that for the art there, because that's not going to go into any newspaper. That wasn't his job. He was doing that artistically. And it was just weird, though, if you see photographers like, oh, that's a good picture, I'm going to take the opportunity.
So, Shad Diversity, he put up a thing saying, look how much my art has improved of... like Supergirl or something. I don't know if you saw those pictures. And I tend to agree with the arguments he's trying to make, but they were both awful pictures. Like, neither was compelling in any way. Like, it's very hard to have a compelling picture of a person. Like, people think, oh, beautiful woman, compelling photos. Like, no, the pose and what's going on matters so much.
So that art book Mom got me.
Well, the one I got you too, Waterhouse.
Yeah, sorry, Waterhouse. You got Waterhouse.
Yeah.
Waterhouse.
All he does is paint the same woman. Oh, it's his wife. Over and over and over and over again. But they're in so many different mythological settings and so many different nature settings.
And it's mostly paintings of women. Waterhouse. Like, it's mostly paintings of
it's
women.
his wife.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And they are gorgeous. Like, and it is art.
He's one of my favorite artists.
One of the really cool ones is, so this book is a collection of his art. It has The Mermaid, and it's like 1875, and then The Mermaid, 1880. She's combing her hair in both of them.
Yeah.
And you see how much he improved, like, from the one date to the other. And it's basically like the same piece of art, but there's so many subtle differences. Like, whoa, he did things differently, and he changed some stuff up. But even without his improvement, like, there's so much artistry in everything he does with his painting.
It's not just... he's talented. Like, his photos aren't photorealistic in the slightest. His pictures aren't photorealistic. But it's how they arrange themselves. Yeah. There's flowers draped about. The women are sitting in a specific way. You have... the subject matter is really interesting. For example, my favorite painting by him is probably The Magic Circle. It's a witch drawing the magic circle on the ground. But another great painting of his is Orpheus and the Sirens, where Orpheus is tied to the ship's mast and the sirens are all around him.
One of my favorite ones from that book, first I saw, is a maiden with a knight. And one of the things that makes me feel justified is because I used to draw a lot of knight armor. And our dad told me, I was like, oh, Dad, look at my art. And our dad basically told us, like, that's not the type of art that people like drawing knights. You can maybe give it to, like, comic books. And maybe it wasn't our dad, but basically someone told me, like, drawing knights or whatever, and those fantasy stuff isn't the kind of art that people go for, and it's not the kind of art you should basically try to do. So I don't think it was our dad who said it. But anyways, I feel very justified now of looking at Warhouse's art because he's a massive nerd, and like he's drawing mythology and all these things.
That's what painters did, though. It was mythology and religion.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, oi, why was I told and given the impression that this wasn't the kind of art that people wanted?
And a lot of the times they'd be like, okay, what part of the Bible is the Virgin Mary naked? Because I want to draw a naked woman, but I have to make it look like I'm doing something important for God. So
Yeah.
like that's what a lot of it was. But there is also,
Oh dear, Aphrodite's robe slipped. Well, it's part of the scene.
another Waterhouse painting, which is incredibly famous, is it Paris and the Nymphs? I can't remember who it is, but there's a guy reaching into a pool full of nymphs sitting around, and you could draw like a dude and 4 women standing side by side, and it would be a really boring picture. But these are people. There's lily pads, and there's people reaching around, and so that's very important. And so, if someone took one of Shad's Supergirl image generations he did, and they stuck it up as a reference, and they did an oil painting of it, it'd make an okay poster maybe. But if they fixed the lighting as well, because his lighting was all weird. Because that's the thing, you have to be able to recognize, wait, this lighting makes no sense.
Yeah.
This painting's making me dizzy.
That's one of the most important things in art is lighting.
And it's a lot easier. It's actually a lot easier to do if it's not AI art, because you just imagine a light source and then everything follows.
Well, actually, the greatest cheat you can do if you're using digital art.
Actually draw the light source in?
No, it's not that. What you do is you decide where the light source is.
A light layer?
No, it's just...
Okay.
You put the light source. Then you take the subject matters that are going to have shadows. And you you know the select tool?
Yeah.
So you create a new layer, you select that subject matter. Then you fill that in with black. Then you flip on an angle and stretch it. Then you just make it slightly translucent, so it's now a shadow across the scene. So you basically take the subject matter, create a shadow from that subject matter, and put it out onto the scene.
Oh, so you just kind of stretch it into a shadow.
Yeah. You rotate, put it on the ground, stretch it.
That's one of those... See, that's an art technique.
Yeah.
One I learned for video editing. I did a stop... I don't know what's it called. You take about like a couple thousand photos over the course of several days. A time lapse. Yeah. I did a time lapse, and the problem was the sun kept flickering on and off.
Yeah.
And it was making like my video had an epilepsy warning basically attached to it. And so I was like, how do I fix this? There's these deflicker tools, but it doesn't really work. And there's like light level evening, but that makes my whole video look really washed out. So I was looking for techniques, and a guy said, take your video, copy it, put the copied layer on top of it at half transparency, move it 1 frame over, and then the light levels balance out, because when it was dark, it's now bright. And the thing is, though, if it's only 1 frame out of sync, you can't tell as a viewer.
Yeah.
And so it just evens out the light levels, and that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And it takes, it doesn't take some fancy program or complicated thing. It's just boop, and you're done. And so there's all these cool techniques you can develop. But yeah, what I want to get to is, okay, so you have this painting of Wonder Woman, or Supergirl, same thing. And then there's like a goblin trying to mine through the wall. It's very distracting.
Yes.
So you have Supergirl, that painting. But then, and so someone's done it completely from scratch, right? They fix the lighting, they have this painting of her. But it's like, okay, it's just Supergirl flying in the sky.
Yeah.
Maybe if you do I'm a sucker for clouds. If you do the clouds nice, maybe I'll like it. But then you take the thumbnail art you did for one of our videos of death over Europe and the famine going on. And on the other side of him is winter or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
There's 3 images in that. I don't think you made any of them. You might have made death.
I barely made death. I made his robes and hands.
So there's 3 images in there, and we'll say that you didn't make any, or you half made one. And it's really cool. Like I think it's a really, really cool image, because you arrange things properly.
Yeah.
Well,
so the Supergirl. I haven't seen the images, but let me make Supergirl a compelling image for you of whatever Shad did. So you put so you have to use Control Net to do this, but you basically use generation with Control Net. So you put her into the Superman pose of the fist.
Yeah.
And she's going up and she's flying. So you have her coming up at an angle. And you have the clouds below her, and there's a hole in the clouds. So she's basically punched a hole through the clouds, and you have like some of the clouds trailing off her.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a compelling image.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I didn't think of that. And see, there's a...
So now you have to use Shad's prompts and figure out how to basically put that in there.
I think that's where the artist comes in, though, right? Like, the artist is the person that says, here's the image, right? Like, the creative vision. And I think what might be going on in all the AI art debate, maybe I'll be totally wrong here, but a lot of time it is artists that are like, I'm a commission artist and this is destroying my career. And that sucks.
Yeah.
But that is a different argument to make.
Yes.
You can say this stuff is allowing the market to be filled with garbage because there's people that have no idea what they're creating is bad and they're just spilling their... Like, if you go to the Stable Diffusion Reddit, everyone's like, look at this picture I made, and they put like 20 photos up and like, these are all terrible. Why are you... You're just so... I get it. You're really excited. This is a new technology. You're having lots of fun. That's awesome. Don't share it because it's garbage.
Yeah. What annoys me more is the people post their bad results online.
Yeah.
And so you look up a dragon and then it's not even to the point of it's a formed dragon but it's doing nothing interesting. It's like this terrible mess of
Stable Diffusion does dragons so badly. It gives them like 3 necks.
Yeah, no, and so you get various things like that when you're trying to look up images online. I hate those.
And people... There's a mod for Skyrim right now. It replaces the loading screens with AI-generated art.
Yeah.
And the idea behind the images is great, right?
Yeah.
He's got the right spirit, but he did not look at his photos and be like, wait a minute, this dragon has 2 necks and it looks nothing like a Skyrim dragon.
Yeah.
And this woman, she's standing in front of the light source, but the light is behind her. That would actually work, but you know what I mean. Yeah. She's standing behind the light source, but the light's behind her, something like that. They don't know how to look at their art and be like, wait a minute, is this actually compelling? Is there actually something here? So my theory, I made a photo. I don't know if I showed you. It was for the local llama. It was like a combination of all the models kind of jammed into one, and it looks like a little kid's drawing. And people loved it, and they're like, wow, this is really well done because it looks because they're AI people for one thing, so they're not going to check.
This is a problem, actually. You pointed it out. This is why people hate AI artists and hate AI art. It's because it's the artists who understand art to an extent. And then the people who are using AI art aren't artists.
Yeah.
And they're a bunch of nerds.
And they're making garbage.
Who are making garbage.
Yeah.
And so that's all that people see is the garbage.
Well, so when I see these people, like they say, GPT-4 can make amazing prose. Like, here's a story where it said, use the most beautiful language you can. Yeah. And it's just purple prose nonsense that, like, a 6th grader needs to have it beaten out of them. Right? Like, it's the kind of stuff that someone, when they're, like, 15, they write fan fiction.
Yeah.
And they fill it with 1,000 adverbs. And they're like, the susurration of the clouds as they swept across the windswept sea and the glorious sunrise rising above the creaking trees. It's stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's just filler nonsense. You can do that sort of thing correctly. Like, read the name of the wind. Yeah. There's a way to do that right. But GPT-4 can't do it. But that is not me saying you're not a... Okay, well, here's where I was getting at, actually. Yeah. You're not a writer if you use GPT-4 to create your story, let's say. Okay, but what does that mean? GPT-4 wrote it for you. You're like, you're not a writer. Okay, but that doesn't mean you're not an artist. You are something new. You're an AI story crafter. And I think that's the same with AI art. You're not a painter if you tell the AI art to make you a painting.
Yeah.
Right? You're not a painter, but you are I think you could say you're an artist, but it's a totally different kind of art.
It's a totally different kind of art, and...
You could say you're not even a visual artist. You could say you're a... Because I think, like, math and programming...
Yeah.
The problem solving and clever little tricks you're doing, especially if you're doing, like, integration, that's art.
Yeah.
But saying, like, oh, you're an artist... I think when people hear artist, they think you've got a pencil and you've got paint, right? And so I think there is a bit of that there.
Yeah, so... There are certain things and rules you want to do with art. So say some people know these rules instinctually, some people have been taught them. This one part is art. So the rules of thirds. Do you know the rules of thirds?
I did at one point. You want to have a third of your painting empty to let the rest of the painting breathe.
That's a part of it. Yeah. So what it is you have your palette, not your palette, your canvas.
Yeah. Now
you cut it to 9 equally sized rectangles or cubes.
Yeah.
So, any subject you put into this art, you don't want inside a cube, you want on the lines of the cube, preferably at the intersects. That's where all the subjects should be placed.
I mean, that's like your opinion, man.
That is the opinion of thousands upon thousands, if not millions of people throughout time. What is considered the best art follows that rule.
Right, but the thing about modern art is that it breaks rules on purpose to demonstrate that you can break rules.
Yeah, and most modern art is terrible.
Well, it depends how you interpret it, right? Because a lot of the large point of postmodern art especially, is to say...
Money laundering.
But the artistry is actually to say, this is why we have the rule.
Yeah.
Like literally, you're making a statement. You're saying, we have this rule for a reason. This is what happens if you don't follow it. And you can create some very compelling pieces with that, especially if you're an artist.
Yes.
Because you're like, I've seen 1,000 paintings that follow the rule of thirds.
Yeah.
This one doesn't. And I just keep looking at it, and it's like, how did he do that?
Yes.
He didn't follow the rule of thirds, and it's just... something about it.
Well, that's what some of the famous artists did.
That's like a Picasso.
Picasso actually started breaking the rules, and that's why.
Yeah.
You can break the rules in interesting ways, definitely. But yeah,
rule of thirds.
Yeah, so when I do AI art, a lot of time, or when I make thumbnails, like I follow the rule of thirds quite often, either by following it purposely or the thing gets moved around until it follows the rule of thirds, because that's one, I have the liberty to move things around because I layer my assets. And so it's either, okay, I need to follow the rules of thirds, or there's two things in the subject image. They don't look right this close. They don't look right this far away. They end up here. Oh, I followed the rules of thirds. How about that?
Yeah, and the thought disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I was getting at. So I wasn't just bragging about my image. What I've been doing, I've been experimenting with a bit, is I've been using a scatter. So it's basically like an ink blot arranged into the golden ratio and sticking that into QR code monster, which makes images follow like a QR code pattern, but they can be words, they can be anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen them. There's silly words or Rick Astley or whatever it might be. And then you say, okay, use this and make a painting that looks like this. And so then it's forced to follow the golden ratio.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how to confirm this, but I think it makes better images. Not like it has to like warp people sometimes to fit it, right? But so it doesn't make better images in that, they have 5 fingers. Like that's really easy to check. You look at the number of fingers, but number of fingers isn't a compelling image. But I think what it does, for example, I have this picture of a man in a study, and he's holding a book.
Yeah.
And he's looking at it, and there's this archway above him, and he's hunched over, and his back follows the arch, and it's like everything swirls from his lower back up through his head, through the arch, around up to his robes, spins around the book in his hand, basically. That's how the image moves. And then there's another one of like a priestess standing in front of a stained glass window, and everything is symmetrical, and it again follows the golden ratio. And I think that might be the next step for like...
Well, what that is basically an artist deciding to do a series of images that are going to follow the golden ratio. And so you still have to make it arrange and have the lighting work, so you have to put in the right prompts. But you're going to go, this follows the golden ratio. And because you're doing AI art, you figured out a technique which makes it follow that form. And there's definitely probably going to be a point or a tool, if not one already, with the Automatic 1111, which is going to be...
composition or something.
Composition. So there's a very famous image technique, which is basically one of the starting things you learn. You draw a tiny cube, and you put it somewhere. So you can put it in dead center, you can put it like bottom right corner, you can put it anywhere. And then after that, you draw lines from it to every corner of the piece of art. And you want to do this quite lightly. Then you draw an image that follows that perspective it generates. And you can cut off the top to make a skyline. And then as you get better at it, you sort of erase the lines so it's still there, and you have that perspective thing of that perspective stretch. And so
you just teach AIs these
you
techniques.
put that into the AI, and so that's a perspective stretch. And that's like, I don't know if you would do that because they make cool looking images, and this is definitely more for a learning experience, and they can at times make really good looking images, but this is more first year art class learning. But this is a compositional technique. And so I definitely think at some point compositional techniques will be put into it.
Okay, so here's the question then. You roll in the rule of thirds into the AI. I think Midjourney already, people don't know because it's closed source, but the theory is it generates like 10 images every time you give it a prompt, and then it has a second AI that chooses the image to show you.
Yeah.
And that image has some sort of compositional rules or something like that. The selection criteria. Yeah. So you roll into it golden ratio. You roll into it the rule of thirds. You roll into it that perspective technique, and you just keep adding every artist technique. You give it the Bob Ross sponges. You give it the knife technique. You show it how to blend paints. Is there a point where you say, okay, you're not an artist for using this? And if there is, could the disconnect people thinking we're already there?
that would be the same thing of saying a photographer, are you an artist? Because
So-
a lot of people still don't think that photographers are artists, or are they not?
Yeah, so then are you saying the art is entirely in choosing the right image?
I'm going to say it's different. That's the photographer is choosing the right image and having the technique and understanding lighting. With AI art, it's choosing the right image, but also having a destination you want.
So with AI art, it's the intentionality.
Yes, the intention. So a thing I have in a lot of my magic systems, which I have difficulty because I try to get rid of it, but a lot of the time, one of the most important parts of my magic systems, it just happens over and over again, is intention. Intention has to be there for magic to work.
Yeah, I don't know if there is magic without intention.
Yeah. And so I think art, a lot of time, art has to have intention. And sometimes you're sitting in the back of your van with your buddies, and one guy's just sitting there and he goes, dun, 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 dun. And everyone's like, what is that? Play that again. And he does it again. And he's just sitting there. And they realize that they discovered something amazing. But other times someone's going there and he's like, and we gotta work on this more. And so you get file count and you work on it more. And there's like, I'm actually pretty certain those two are flipped. The was a guy just playing a riff.
Right.
But so there's sometimes you discover something, and that can be in art. Sometimes you discover, like the image I painted for our mum for Christmas was I had a canvas, and any leftover paint I had, if it was of the right color, I would paint it onto this canvas, and I was slowly creating an image. And I had a sort of idea what the image was going to be. Then I took that, I was like, I'm going to make this an image for Christmas for her. And I had it on the couch. And I walked by it, and I looked at it upside down. It's like, whoa, there's a completely different image here when it's upside down. And so I flipped the canvas over, and I painted the upside down image that wasn't there in the first place.
It's very common, it seems. I haven't read that many accounts, but of carvers, like wood and marble and whatnot. You're not making something,
You're finding what's inside it.
You're finding what's inside. Like you're an archaeologist sort of digging out the statue that was inside.
Yeah.
Because you get a harder bit of rock and you go, okay, follow that line. And you get the marble just twists a bit and you're like, okay, follow that line. And if you chip something off, you're like, well, I can't put it back. So now we're following this and we're seeing what it does.
There's certain art forms like that, but there is an intention all the same of you're finding what's inside. But there's an artist who he looked at a bunch of different rocks. He's basically constantly looking for different rocks. And he go, okay, I could do that with that one. I could do that with that one. But I really want to, I really want to make the David. So he sees a marble blocks. That one, that will make the David. And so there's that thing that happens sometimes of you look for the stone that will have the David inside it.
Statue of Dave.
Yeah. Statue of David inside. So that happens there as well. And so there is an intention even there. If you're discovering what's inside, but you're looking for David to be carved out of it all the same.
Okay, so if an AI comes along, you just click a button and out pops a YouTube video, and someone does that and their YouTube channel gets like 1,000 subscribers a day.
Yeah.
Just takes off like crazy. Will you say the person that's run that channel, would you call them a YouTuber?
Yeah.
What if everyone's doing it? Everyone's doing it. Because the thing is as well, the first person to do it is an artist by default because they're pushing a frontier.
Yeah.
But when you're jumping on the bandwagon, you're the 1,000th person to do it or the 100,000th person to do it. And you're like, well, I'm going to make an AI YouTube channel and I'm just going to have it spew its garbage into the void. Are they an artist? Are there people making AI images who are artists and people making AI images who are not?
I think so, yeah.
And with my compositional thing, so here's an interesting, that painting, well, not painting, that picture I told you of the guy holding the book,
yeah.
I have a extension called Wildcard where it just throws random words into it and then it makes an image based on that. And that guy was done using that plus my golden ratio control net.
Yeah.
So the question there is, I think the artistry is in me experimenting with trying to make the golden ratio reality, but I didn't choose that image in the slightest.
So you're telling me about the man with the book. So there's probably quite a few images you're not going to tell me about because they're just not good enough. Like there's no story behind them. There's nothing interesting in them. And so with the YouTubers of these AI YouTubers, right?
Yeah.
So you have Sigma Alpha, and he just sits there and he just says do these, and they just pour, and he actually has a schedule, so it'll create a video, it'll send it, it'll create a video, send it, it'll create a video. And then you have Gamma.
Yeah.
And Gamma's there, and he's like, all right, Create a YouTube. His channel is about history. All right. Create a YouTube video about World War II. Create me 10 of them. And he looks at all of them. And, I really want this to create me a YouTube video about World War II that focuses on Canada. And even the other guy beforehand, he could do that as well. But this guy says, make 10 of them. And then he watches the videos. That's not very good. No, that one. I don't like that one. I don't like that one. Okay, that one will work. And he puts that on his channel. Process takes him a lot longer. But he has far fewer videos as well on his channel. But they're all a lot better than the first guys because he's just like blur, 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 blur. Now, it comes to a point where the AIs are so incredible that even their vomit is a diamond.
Yeah, better than any human would ever make.
Yeah. But even with that, even their vomit's better than a diamond. The guy who looks at 10 diamonds and goes, this is the diamond for me. This diamond speaks to me. And it speaks to people who think like me. There you go.
Art is the bearing of your soul.
Yeah.
And so if you share an image, even your garbage image you're throwing up on Stable Diffusion, you're super excited, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, look at me. This is my soul. This is what compels me.
This is my soul.
I'm a garbage person with no taste. This is my soul for you.
Yes.
But actually, these 10 videos, he's not choosing the 10 diamonds. They're all equally good. They're all equally the best.
Yeah.
And so what he's doing by choosing is he's saying not, this is the best one. He's saying, this is the one that speaks to me. So he's saying, here is my soul.
Yeah.
So my working definition of art is or was, art is making a statement. But I think I might have to change it to, art is the bearing of your soul. So if I'm taking piano lessons and teacher says, right, learn this song for the Royal Conservatory. And so I learn it and I play it flawlessly and they give me a gold star. And I was just like, here's the song, whatever. And that isn't saying much. Yeah. But I take a song, I'm like, can I learn this song? I'm like, yeah, sure. And so I learn it and I practice it and I play it every day and I add my own spin to it. Or even I don't add my own spin to it, but I just say, well, you kind of have to with music. But
yeah,
even the Royal Conservatory piece, I'll have my own spin on it. But I'm just playing it because I was told, here's the piece you need to learn. Whereas if I'm given this piece and I say, this is mine, this is me. Yeah. Like, everyone talks about the Goldberg variations.
Yeah.
He took Bach and made it his own.
Yeah. So I made a recording of Good King Wenceslas.
Yeah.
That I put out. So what people don't hear with that is I'm singing it and the part's wrong, and so I stop and I sing that part again. I stop and I sing again. And then I go through and I basically delete a whole bunch of sections and put it together. Now, a better singer than me could probably do it in one take. But for me, it was that I was too low pitched at that point for the page. And I have to delete that. I have to do that again. And so I had to do that again. I had to delete parts. I had to put it together. And so it's my own composition of the song. And there's a whole bunch of it that's not shown. That is, I got rid of. Because that wasn't right for that version.
So, is the distinction between AI artists and all the other artists, right? The other artists are playing on Iron Man mode.
Well, not even, because they can control Z if they're a digital artist.
Mm-hmm. But in a conceptual level, they're control Zing less compared to an AI doing thousands of calculations a second, let's say.
Yeah.
So they're playing on hardcore but not Iron mode. Yeah. Iron Man. But the AI is on easy, no Iron Man. Because we were talking about earlier with movies, there is an art to doing things in one take.
Yeah.
But there's also any song you hear on the radio is not done in one take.
Yeah.
Unless it's some like niche country song that got super popular for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't know if you'd hear it on the radio, but Richmond, North of Richmond might have been one take. I'm not sure.
It was done in one take, but the song wasn't written in one take.
But a lot of those videos you see with people sitting in a studio with a guitar singing, those are dubbed.
Yeah.
That's a music video. That isn't actually a recording video.
Yes.
So, and he's in a forest with really good acoustics, so I'm not sure if that is actually him singing in the music video. That might be a dub as well. But, well, it is interesting. You look at, like, Rumi Official, and he talks about the artistry of the splicing and the layering and the...
Yeah.
And you listen to Blind and Frozen, one of my favorite songs, and there's a part in it where there's a harmony with the singer with himself. He's singing one octave above, or 2 octaves maybe above the rest of the song. You can't do that in one take.
So, actually, There's a very famous song, which was done in one take, Fire and Flame.
Hmm.
And why I know it's done in one take is there are
That was done in one take?
yes, there are two parts of that song, the official recording, which in live performances they cannot do. And so they've developed techniques, or it's just one thing. The major thing is the string broke of his guitar.
Yeah.
At one point. It's because he's playing and the string broke. And so when he does a live performance, he puts his tongue against it and goes and then flicks it with his teeth so it sounds like it's breaking again. And they have to like do insane things because they're trying to copy the recording whenever they play live now.
Huh.
And there's just so many weird elements in that recording that are really, really hard to do. Like, they have this whole thing, which a lot of power guitarists do it, which is they flick their guitar with their hand and it goes and they're completely just letting the guitar go and vibrate in the air. And Fire and Flame, it did something weird because like the strap on him was messed up and so it made a slightly different sound. So now they have to like develop a technique to make it do that every time now.
So I think one of the aspects people are trying to speak to, but it's difficult in our rationalist world, is the lack of magic. Or the fact that we imbue things with magic because of the story. So if you say that the Mona Lisa was painted by Leonardo da Vinci and it was the result of him, he was this beggar crawling in the dirt and he had to scrape together paint and he had to make his own paints and chew them, and he learned by peeking in through the windows of the University of Venice, and he would try to find discarded paintings of masters. He'd go around the dumpster and like take them. This isn't true, but I'm just saying this is what. And he'd go around and he'd take them and he'd learn technique from that, and he would study people's faces and try to get it right. And it took him years of just scraping it. He made this painting, and you'd appreciate the painting more. You'd be like, "Wow, amazing! Someone did this." Or you say, Da Vinci whipped out Stable Diffusion and he banged it off in 5 minutes, called it a night. He used Control Net twice, tweaked it a little bit, got what he wanted. You'd be like, oh, there's a nice picture, but it's less magic behind it.
And I think one of the things with that is people don't understand the magic. Because as I said, that image of that fairy, like there's more to it than just Control Net going on. But if we go purely with the Control Net and the Stable Diffusion that I did, even that, like every step I went through, that probably took me 10 hours.
Well, I don't think time invested is quite the quality.
Well, it's not time, but it's like I had to learn things, how to use the things. I had to do stuff. A lot of results didn't work. There was like a bunch of failures that had to be thrown away. There was a process and a tale to it myself, but it's a kind of boring tale in some ways because
well, yeah, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like I said with the child's talent show.
Yeah.
It's about how good the story is, not how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Or it has to be interesting, not boring.
Yeah.
And
here's an interesting part of that story. When I upscaled it, I had 4 different upscales, all at 4,000 pixels across 4,000 tall. And none of them looked right. And then I had my original image, which was 1,000 by 1,000. And what I did is I stretched out my original image. And I put all 4 images on top of that. And then I took the parts that I wanted and I deleted other parts. And so it has like the face of one of the upscales, and then it has the hands of the original. And then I had to, because the hands are pixelated, I had to go over the hands and redraw them completely. I had to make the art line up. I had to make it all sit together. And so this stitched monster, which had all the stitching slowly erased and everything codified into this one solid image. And so, you know, in Bionicle, when you have like all the masks of the Toa Nuva, and then they all get combined together into one thing. It felt like that, putting it together, of all them layering into each other, and like each aspect that was the best came to the forefront and shone and was left behind.
And so but imagine if a year from now, you get the image you wanted first try.
Yeah.
Does that diminish your picture? There's not.
It diminishes the tale, but I don't think it diminishes the picture.
And in that tale might be where the artist dwells.
Maybe.
And because we have.
But then again, so you have the image that you want, and so there's the man who, if he wants 5 images, he has the 5 images produced. And it gives you the thing you want the first time you do it. And then there's the guy in his room, and he has prints. He does, both these people are doing printouts. So the guy has the 5 printouts. And the guy has hundreds of printouts on the walls layering each other. and he just makes image after image after image, sometimes of the same thing 5 times, like in different poses. And it's all first tries, all what he wants exactly bang on, but he has this vision of so many different things that he wants to get out of his head and into physical reality. And he's using this as a tool to do it. And so there's a mad art in what he's doing.
Well, is that art or is that something else? Like, that is definitely a use case. You need to get the vision out and you need to get that thing out of your head, right?
Yeah.
But is that person an artist? Do they get to wear the illustrious beret
Well,
and turtleneck?
I think the devil's laughing quite a bit with this AI art right now.
I don't know if you've seen... I've been copy-pasting that poem everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, whenever there's an AI art argument, I just copy-paste that poem and I'm like, bam.
Yeah.
Like, in comments of videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah, the devil's laughing right now. He has what he wants.
And it's amazing. Kipling wasn't talking about AI art, but he could have been. But
Kipling wasn't talking about art. He's talking about humanity.
yeah, he was saying this is how humans go. We're full of doubt and judgment.
People are burying their soul, and then you're saying, "Are you really?"
And if you are, is it any good?
Yeah.
And like so. You have your story
I must learn to better bear my soul.
So you have your boring story of using Photoshop for 10 hours, whereas Da Vinci struggled in the trash, right?
Yeah.
But Da Vinci, he could just find paint. Some caveman had to go and he had to raise frogs. Like he had to have a farm of frogs that he had to feed and grow food for so he could mash them up for colors. And then he had to raise boars to get just the right bristles. He had to breed boars for 10 years to get the right bristles for his brush.
And if he wanted the color purple, he had to go into the ocean, grab these tiny little creatures and squeeze them for a tiniest drop of purple.
Or he had to gather a bunch of lichen and scrape it off rocks and like chew it. I don't know how you make lichen into colors, but you can.
Probably chew it and then let it dry and then chew it and then let it dry.
Add acid. Litmus tests are done with a lichen, apparently. I didn't know that until very recently. And so they turn like blue or red. So I guess you could add
peanut,
like an acid or a base, and you get blue or red at the very least.
Yeah.
And there are purple lichens as well. Or red often comes from beetles on a cactus. But you had to start a cactus farm. And you think your story of scraping in the sewers means anything? Yeah. So this is maybe too rational, but one of my main contentions with people having a problem with AI art is that it's kind of the line stops now, does it? Everything else through all of human history, that was okay.
Well, that's why that poem's so good as well, because Adam is scraping in the dirt.
Yeah.
And then the devil basically says to him, "It's pretty, but it's art." And then like his children are like building cathedrals and painting stuff, and it's like whatever, but it's art, and it's just. Like over and over and over again, like you take so many more steps, you go so much further, and the devil's just there again. It's like, huh. You think you've done something worthy of your name?
Have you heard the poem, the gods of the copybook papers or whatever it's called? It's based on school used to really suck, so your notebooks would all have like Bible verses at the top, and so your exercise would be to copy the Bible verse until you filled the page and just go through your book doing that. And I guess you probably had pretty amazing writing. It'd be very tidy after a while. But
you don't. Your hand just hurts and your dysgraphia takes over.
But the idea was that not only do you you become better at writing,
but you also
you also get a moral education because you're memorizing Proverbs. But the poem's great because it's this massive rant against like feminism, the coal industry, I think, immigration. It's just this old, like it was his last poem, I think. It's just this old man ranting about everything he hates. It's like everything changed and I don't like it. Yeah. But he takes all these slogans of like the people, like feminism or whatever, and he puts them in the poem, and then he just uses a single line from the copybook papers, and he's like, "The wages of sin is death," and just denies them, and he says like, we already had these gods telling us that this was wrong, and yet we're just ignoring them. And I think he's my favorite poet easily. His poems are amazing.
It's even on that, like we're saying, so the AI art produces immaculate, perfect pictures, right? So like 10 years time or a year's time, whatever. And So we're talking about, will art be able to do that? However, here's the thing. I was one of the most early adapters to using AI art. Like, there's people way earlier than me, but
Yeah.
like, I wasn't the 1%, but I was in the 10% of early adaptation. And a lot of them look pretty bad, and I had to do a lot of stuff on them. And
Well, I think you were probably in the 1%, but not in the 0.1 or something. Yeah.
yeah, but like a lot of the AI art I made looked pretty good. A lot of it's never seen the light of day. And I edited a lot of it quite heavily. And so I was doing art to that artwork. AI art can produce a lot better. One of the things I do now with my AI art is, because it has some limitation, it produces I produce 3 images. So I get background, I get 2 people, I put them all together. Boom, have the piece of art. I make sure that their lighting looks right with each other, and they match the scene. So because it's now easier to do that, I can get the images, I can do that. At some point, I'll be able to go to artwork and say, okay, I want left person to be an old man, I want right person to be this young woman, and I want background to be a castle, and it won't have any confusion, so it'll just be able to do that. I will still probably find a way to do more art to that and more things to that. That's the case with people. People will find a way to do more to that and more with it. And then when the AI art catches up to doing the new things I do, then I'll be able to do even more. And in Star Trek, there's this fun episode where they find a satellite from the 21st century. Or maybe it's the 23rd, I don't know. But there's a bunch of people who are cryogenically frozen in it. One of them's this rock star who's going to die of liver disease. Another is this woman who had a brain aneurysm and she's basically dead. And another's this businessman who had some problem. So they find these people and they're frozen, and the doctor, this is the Next Generation, basically tells the captain, all these things were fatal to them at this point, but we can cure all of them easily now. And so Picard's make it so, cure them. And so they cure them, then defreeze them. And they have like these 3 or 4 people on their ship who are from our century. And so the rock star is just like, this is great, like I'm alive, I'm not dying of my liver disease. And he goes to date and is like, let's play some music together. And he's like drinking the synth alcohol and messing with the machine. And he's already figuring out his way. He's like, I'll play music. What is his line? All my stuff is long gone and dead. And so no one's ever heard it. So I'll be able to play all my old stuff over again. And it's going to rock these worlds. And everyone's going to love me. So that's his perspective thing. So he's one of the characters. Another one is this woman who, her husband basically froze her because he couldn't bear the thought of her dying. But he didn't really care about her. It's more of she's a possession to him. He's like, her whole thing was, I'm a mother. I'm like a part of the family. My family's gone. And so Counselor Troy is like, all right, we're going to take some of your DNA. We're going to look at your records. I found your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchild. Do you want to talk with them? She's like, yes. And so she gets connected with her, like, generation upon generation. So now these people have this, like, weird ancestor from the past. And so she's found her purpose of being, like, the super matriarch of this family. And then the final person's this businessman. And he's like, well, my investments are going to be extremely massive. I want to contact, like, a broker. And Data basically Picard tells him, we no longer really have money. Your assets are all kind of gone because we have these things called replicators. You can get basically whatever you want. And the guy's like, what's the point then of like doing anything in this world? Because I'm not going to own anything. I'm not going to have anything. And he's like, all of my investment in the past, like this money, this business acumen, it's worthless. And Picard says, the goal now is to better oneself and to explore the world and see what's new and to do things to progress humanity. And then they encounter the Ferengi. And the Ferengi are being their shrewd bargaining merchant selves. And this business, they're basically like running rings around Picard and his crew. And this businessman has to turn off the communicator. And so they turn off. And this is what they're doing here. This is what we're doing here. This is how we communicate with them. This is the deal we do. So he tells Picard how to interact with the Ferengi. Picard like turns back on, does everything he says. And they basically best the Ferengi because of this businessman.
So the underlying skills always remain even if the medium changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's the thing. Like, these artists that don't like the AI art will be the best AI artists.
Yeah.
Because they, like you said, the dude that puts in 1,000 hours produces the same thing that you did in 10.
Yeah.
But if he used the same tools as you, the stuff he'd produce would crush yours in comparison, because he's like, I've got 10,000 hours of experience to tell you that, like, not at first, because he'd have to learn how to use the systems.
Yeah.
He'd have to put in the same amount of work you did for the AI system. But then he would be off to the races, because he'd be like, I know exactly what I'm looking for and I know what to do. Yeah, so that is the second aspect to AI art, is that
This is the aspect to humanity, like the cart and horse. It disappeared. Now we have people who, for tourist attraction, they drive cart and horses, like in the main street of London, let's say. They charge a ridiculous sum of money, like their ancestor who was doing that, let's say cart and horse. It was just, he was a taxi service. He made the same fare as a taxi driver. This guy's a specialist. He takes care of his horses and knows what he's doing. His costs are a lot more because taking care of horses is more expensive now. But he also can charge a lot more because he has a specialist skill. Same thing with Sargent, let's say. So Sargent, he actually did make a lot of money. But let's say he's alive today and he's painting portrait people. But there is a bunch of rich people like, oh, I want a patron by Sargent.
yeah.
And like he can charge him like $2,000 a painting.
Well, the problem with him though is like you could literally just take a photograph because he's too perfect.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you can say, no, feel the paint. That's paint.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, what the? Someone did that? So maybe even today, people would be like, yeah, give me a Sargent.
Yeah, and there's still a case of there is still portrait painters out there. And it's like for noble families, it's a prestige thing to have a portrait instead of just a family picture. Like you get a portrait painted. And so there's specialists who still paint portraits. There's people who, like I said, drive the cart and horse. There's YouTubers,
What's that court?
the horse and cart. There's that YouTuber who everyone copies. What is he called? The stone, like he builds buildings and like
Oh, the primitive technology dude.
primitive technology. Like
or the first one, whoever he was, yeah.
Primitive is the first.
Okay.
So there's tons of people who copy him and like behind the scenes they're using like backhoes and crews, but ignoring all that, primitive technology is doing like these old technologies, these old techniques, and people are absolutely fascinated by them. And there's this rise of a kind of YouTuber which didn't exist before.
The restoration ones? Or
Not the restoration. No, it's they're a part of this group of YouTubers, which is they are specialists in a field, or not even specialists. They're someone who is skilled in a field, who has an interesting personality and has passion for what they're doing, and understands how to make videos.
like Legal Eagle, or
Yes.
or those like
Lockpicking.
a lawyer reacts, or
Lockpicking lawyer, or the composers who listen to video game music. There's different levels. Like some of them are just, all right, so you're a composer, you're so a composer, and now you're saying I'm a composer who listens to reaction to video game music.
I'm a vocal coach and I'll react to the song.
Whereas there's other people who are like quite interesting. Like they could be a mix of reaction, but they can also be a bit like roomy, and so they are skilled and they also know how to apply more interesting, like Lockpicking Lawyer.
Like Sakurai's YouTube channel.
Yeah, Sakurai's YouTube or Lockpicking Lawyer. Like there's another lockpicker who's a lot faster than Lockpicking Lawyer, and he's kind of like scoffs at a lot of locks. Whereas Lockpicking Lawyer, his videos are fun and interesting, and he points things out. Like his whole video of the easiest method to get through a lock, of he put a lock on the ice cream so his wife won't eat ice cream. Then she's just smugly eating ice cream. It's like, how did she get into it? And she took a knife and cut a hole through the board. And so he has these interesting perspectives. So there's these people who, like, there's these farmers even. Like, actually, one of the greatest examples is, he's not a farmer, but he adapted to it, is Clarkson's Farm. Of he's showing his everyday antics, but also he's showing farming. And because he's good at presenting, he's good at figuring stuff out, and he has specialists doing farm. Like, Caleb is a really good farmer, and he works for him. And the farm manager, I don't know his name, but he has these group of specialists. And so him working with them is a little different, much bigger budget. But they're showing farming. And it's interesting. If someone has passion and they show a thing they do. Like there's this other YouTuber who, he has a really weird house. He bought this house which has like these 2 underground basements that used to be part of like a railroad network. And he filled them into ponds, and he has eels like in his basement, and he like pets them while they're in the water, and he shows off his eels and like the process of doing it. And in the past, that's some weirdo. It's like, come on, let's go on a date. Do you want to see my eels? But like now he's like this Chad guy. So I got these eels in my basement. Look at them, and he like talks about them, and has all this information about them. They're really interesting.
Yeah, there's a big criticism of Shad that I've seen people say, which is that this guy is defending AI art, and yet he lives in a castle and he plays with swords and that sort of thing. But what I think actually is going on.
Do you know who his brother is?
Well, let me finish first. But what I think is actually going on is that he has perspective.
Yeah.
Like he's like, yeah, AI art might kill artists' careers, but I would have been a swordsmith, and yet I'm still having a great time with swords here. You just find a different medium. Like the guy that I was having a little argument with, he's a Twitch streamer and he draws requests from the audience.
Yeah.
You can't. All right, line up your AI. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
People want to see the dude draw the picture with his personality
Yeah.
and be like, oh, I hate making this line because it's just going to look so degenerate, and people want to see it.
Yeah.
They want to see you do it. And Shad's brother is like one of the
much
top
bigger YouTuber.
He's like
artist,
one of the top artist YouTubers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't actually ever seen his stuff, but yeah, I've heard about that. That's what he is. And I don't know if they get along or not, but
They do.
okay, yeah.
And his third brother, who's not a YouTuber, also gets along with them.
And if they do get along, then yeah, that's like because I've heard people say they've been debating AI art a lot, and I don't think his brother likes it or something. But I'm not sure. I haven't seen I haven't seen many of the debates. I don't think most people are making very good arguments or understand their own positions.
So, here's the thing. So one of the things that Shad's brother does is he will take a piece of art, let's say, and a lot of art YouTubers do this, but it's like, let's take a piece of Disney art and then turn it into a dark fantasy. So here's something that Shad's brother could do with AI art, is he could say, I'm going to take Shad's art. So let's say that's Superman.
Yeah.
And then he redraws it to be like the Supergirl punching through the clouds. Like he could basically, like they could have an awesome collab actually of basically Shad creates a bunch of AI art and then his brother redoes it.
Yeah.
In his own styles and changes it.
What Shad does for a lot of his art, because Shad's, you can call him an artist, sure. Shad's an artist too. Like I wouldn't say he's good, but he's better than me. But he, so he could draw a picture. Then he could base an AI picture on that, and then he could give that AI picture to his brother, and his brother, you could have like this layered thing. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
And that's where the art comes in again. But the question is, was the art missing in one of those steps or not? I guess. But I've sort of realized, and I think you might put up with a lot because I was trying to use my techniques that I use on you to get this guy to defend his own position. Not because I disagreed with him, but because I thought he hadn't thought about his position properly. So I was asking him all these questions like, if there was only one AI artist out in the world who there's like everyone's an AI artist, but there's only one who every time he makes a painting it could make you cry, would he count as an artist? And the guy's like, that's a stupid question. Why are you asking that? And I asked another question like, what is the difference between a paintbrush deviating from the course and your picture not giving you exactly what you want? And he's like, look, I already explained that the AI is drawing the picture, not you. And it's like, no. Answer the specific question. And he's like, no, I already explained because what I like to do, as you know, I'm sure, is push to the extremes so that you actually have to understand the limits of your argument. But I wonder if that's actually annoying, because they seem to be annoying.
It is annoying, but here's the thing. It's not annoying for me, and...
it is annoying. It's not annoying for me.
It's not annoying for me, no, and I'm going to explain this further. So I steal my name position.
Yeah.
Some people find it interesting when we do that, other people hate it. So I basically had a debate with Romney and his older cousin, who happened to be our substitute teacher at the time, of the idea that I'm the only person in the universe. So that philosophy, I can't remember.
Solipsism.
Yeah, solipsism. So I was debating solipsism with them. And one thing, they got really affronted by even the concept of it, because you're obviously not the only person in the universe, because I was also doing it from a perspective, solipsism, it has to be yourself.
Yeah.
But I say, well, we could solipsism, and it could be you. It could be your solipsism, let's say. You could be the only person. It's like, but I'm not. So I was trying to argue with this. And they were getting really mad at me because one of the things in an argument is or debate. A lot of people assume your opponent actually holds that position themselves. But when it comes to philosophy and ideas like that, a lot of the time you argue a position you don't believe in.
Or you're exploring the idea.
Yeah, exploring
dialectic
the idea.
rather than
Dialectic.
argument.
Yeah, and so I do that with a lot of things. Of what about this? What about this concept? Like with Dota, I will basically suggest a completely overpowered character. Now, if you play Dota, and I was to discuss this with you, you might push back and tell me a different way to do it. A lot of people that I discuss with, they just say, shut up, that's a bad idea, you don't understand the game, you're bad. Like, in little terms. And so they don't want the dialogue with me, don't want to discuss the idea. And so the Socratic method,
do you think it's because you're hurting something? Like if I think I can come up with an example quite easily. It's not quite the same, but if I'm criticizing Tears of the Kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, I'm criticizing this present you got me, right?
Yeah.
And now that's a much more obvious connection.
Yeah.
But imagine they think of Dota as a part of their identity, and so criticizing that is criticizing their values or their present, that the present of them, because the present is sort of your soul merging with someone else's. And so when you criticize Dota, it's like but this was our thing, and now I wonder if it's something like
No, it definitely is criticizing someone's soul and like various different things. And like in certain points with Dota, not to throw them under the bus, but to throw them under the bus. It's something that they're very good at, and they play because North America West has like a really small scene compared to other things. If you're good, like you're not quite pro good, but you're good enough that all the other players like, oh, this is a good team. Oh, I don't want to play against this team. Like it's called the ZU Crew stack, which we play with, and it has like one of our friends in it who's really good. And it's like, yeah, you can beat the ZU Crew stack. Because they play with me, and I'm not that good, and they play with another guy who's not that good. They play with Percent Spy, who's not that good. But you're going to have to earn that win, because we're not a team like, oh, it's 20 minutes, we're obviously winning, they're just going to roll over and die. It's like, no, this game is going to take 80 minutes, and you're going to have to fight for every single moment of it. And if you mess up once, you will lose.
Zuki's the guy that lived over there, right?
Yeah.
He's good?
He's very good.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that. Like, I knew he was good, but I didn't know he was like...
He's insanely good.
Oh, wow. Good for him.
Like, he's slightly below pro in skill. And so they actually now play in a minor league.
Wow.
Which is, it's just for fun league, but it has like a certain ceiling of skill to get into it. And people recognize their skill. Like, he won 2 of the leagues in a row and it's like a random draft, different team sort of thing going on. And so they're all in it, and they're very, it puffs up their ego, and that's a good thing sometimes. Like, this is something they're good at. And so, yeah, it's very integral. And I was talking with another friend of ours, and he's saying sometimes they get a little too arrogant about it because this is one thing they're very good at. And so, yeah, they want to, like, I'm good at it, this is me. And so when you're not quite as good, or you have a different opinion, or you have a different take, then you're an idiot, because you're obviously not as good as them, even if you have things from a different perspective. And it's just, unfortunately, their way of looking at some things. And so the Socratic method, I remember reading about this, of someone saying, Socratic method is amazing. It's actually, you just ask questions, you try to understand things, and you try to have someone understand their own ideas as well through it. But people hate it, because the Socratic method is really, really good at destroying your own position if it's not built on solid foundations.
Well, the other thing was Socrates would actually use it to the point of proving that the person didn't actually know anything at all.
Yes.
Like the guy that invented it was using it to be annoying.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a very annoying,
And he probably just stole it from his like nephew or something.
In principle...
Why?
In principle, it's not aggressive, but because you are attacking someone's soul by asking it, it is aggressive. And so you can be the kindest person in the world using the Socratic method, and someone sees you as Satan Hitler trying to kill puppies because you're using it.
You're destroying their worldview, yeah.
Yeah, and so because I think it's just a mix of philosophy, trauma, and life perspective, I have one very good gut feeling at knowing what I believe in, even if I don't know the right answers for it, and I will try to defend it even if I mess up sometimes. And if I'm still lacking it, it's like, you're not attacking my soul so much as we're exploring my soul.
And it depends how you do the asking too, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing for me...
Like, you're stupid for thinking that. It's like, whoa, okay, that's not getting anywhere. I
have slightly embraced the philosophy of being an idiot. That's the layman's term of basically saying, like, it's that thing that the gurus always say is you have to know you know nothing. There's a lot of people, when I talk about something I know a lot of, I will be wrong on 50% of the stuff. But I will speak about it compassionately and basically pour it out. And people, when they listen to it, it's very interesting to them. It's very engaging. They like hearing about it.
Unless it's Dota, yeah.
Yeah. Well, unless it's like something they're obviously not interested in, if they have no relation to it whatsoever.
Like Dota.
Yeah. Like Dota for you.
I don't know why it turns my brain off.
Yeah, that's fine. That just happens with some people. And so I can also recognize that sometimes someone will pour that out to me. And if you listen, sometimes people say something interesting. And like that's something that Jordan Peterson said is, if you actually really listen, you're going to hear things you never thought you would hear, and it will like change your world.
The other thing is...
And you actually have to listen. Like, you're not just sitting there waiting for your thing to say. You listen, you take in, you understand.
Okay, shut up. So, the other thing is... the fascinating thing is if you say, okay, I'm going to find something interesting in what this person is saying when you're listening. It almost feels inauthentic, at least to me. But if you do that, you actually become interested in the thing.
Yeah.
Like if you really go like, okay, this is going to interest me. It takes brain power. Like it's actually exhausting to be interested in someone, but it's a choice.
Yes.
You can actually go, okay. Like obviously a lot of stuff flows naturally, but if it's not flowing naturally, you can still go like, okay, lay it to me.
Okay, so in Dota, there are 3 lanes.
Okay, bring it on. Here we go. We're doing it live. Bring it.
Actually, you're ready for it, but I have actually nothing to say about Dota right now, so...
Okay, who's the best character for the middle lane?
Well, that's a really subjective thing, because it really depends on the matchup, because Dota's... in Smash Bros. Very dependent on matchup, like this hero versus this hero.
Yeah.
In Dota, Zeus is a nuker, so he just sends out waves of magic. And so he can be very solid in lane, but he runs out of mana quite quickly, so he's basically like, he spends everything he's out. Where then there's Sniper, who's this little gnome with a sniper rifle. He's got a lot of range, and he can just plink away, and his resources aren't as important.
So it depends who's on your team. Like if you have a guy that can defend the sniper, then he's better or something.
Yeah, well that's the thing. You always want to defend a sniper, but so Zeus versus Sniper is basically going a lineup of the Sniper can consistently harass the Zeus until he dies, but Sniper's squishy, and so Zeus can just, if Zeus lays down enough damage, then Sniper's out of there. And so those 2 mid laners. And then there's Dragon Knight, who his passive ability regens health and gives him armor.
He's got like that red armor, right?
Yeah, he's got red armor.
Yeah, there's a mod for him in Age of Wonders.
Yeah.
Well, not a mod for him, but they added Dota characters.
Yeah, and so Dragon Knight, he's a melee hero, so Zeus and Sniper are ranged. So sure, they can harass Dragon Knight, they can keep plinking him, but his health will just recover the whole time standing there. So Dragon Knight can start stand lane and farm the creeps, which is how he gets money, and money's basically how you win the game. But Dragon Knight's never going to kill Zeus or Sniper, so do you want
to hold or do you want to push?
Yeah, do you want to hold, do you want to push? Or then there's Visage, which is this creepy gargoyle who summons stone birds, and he tears towers down. But he is really slow early game. But once you get to level 6, he can basically wipe things out. So if you're playing mid against a Visage, you want to punish him as much as you can. So Dragon Knight
would be good, because then he could just hold him in place.
Well, no, Dragon Knight's bad, because they would sit there, and Visage would get to level 6, murder Dragon Knight, destroy the tower.
Okay.
Or if it's Sniper versus Visage, then Sniper would kill Visage 5 times. He'd be really far ahead. So even though Visage has this huge spike at level 6, you have a level 12 Sniper, and Visage doesn't stand a chance anymore.
So with Visage versus Dragon Knight, Dragon Knight can prevent you from moving forward, but that doesn't stop you from killing creeps and leveling up, I guess?
Yeah.
Because
both sides have creep lanes.
The creeps are like moving past Dragon Knight?
Creeps are XP and money.
Can Dragon Knight just move forward further then to prevent, like just keep the creep shielded and keep Visage away from them? Or
creeps have an AI, which basically, if you're doing stuff like that, they will move to attack you, and even if you're Dragon Knight, a horde of creeps attacking you plus Visage will kill you.
Right,
so there's systems to basically stop that block.
And he's not able to harass Visage enough to force Visage to focus.
Visage is a flying demon that...
So he can just leave.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking, we were talking about how in Age of Empires, we're both kind of at a skill level where the enjoyment of the game has gone down because we're good enough to know that we have to do all this fiddly stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do
But I'd rather build a town with nicely placed castles.
We don't want to do the fiddly stuff. And you brought up Smash Bros in comparison to Dota, and so I was thinking, like, Smash Bros doesn't actually have that problem, for me at least. Like, there is no, like, I guess there's practicing combos and stuff technically, but I guess I'm not quite good enough for that.
You will feel that sort of thing in Smash Bros. I think you would feel if you play against like super nerds at Smash Bros. Who like
where combos really matter.
Like, I went to the Smash
recovery
Bros.
Mix-ups and all that.
I went to the Smash Bros. Club at Lethbridge, and I played against a guy who was playing with the bird and the bear.
Banjo and Kazooie.
Yeah, and he like knew these 3 combos, basically like these 3 sort of move sets and ways to play Banjo and Kazooie, and he would only play Banjo and Kazooie. And it's the sort of thing that if you do that against a noob, have you ever played Street Fighter?
A few times, yeah.
Have you ever played against someone who actually knows how to do the combos and you don't?
I've done that with Injustice, same idea, I assume. Where
someone knows the combos you do.
You just don't get to play.
Yeah, you just don't get to play. So that's what it felt like with the Banjo Kazooie. Until I picked Ganondorf. And even though Ganondorf had a huge amount of problems, Ganondorf's the sort of character which, like, alright, I hate you once, and you get that feeling of satisfaction back, and that's sort of what he's there for. You're going to lose, but you can have the satisfaction of pulling off a Doria.
So yeah, I guess I'm just not good enough at Smash for that to be an issue.
If you play against those, they're so annoying to play against. But the thing is, I think Smash Bros. You can sort of overcome that, especially your and my play style.
With just enough reads.
We adapt to the person we're playing against, and so I was slowly starting to adapt to how he's playing, and then I could start getting over it. But
so does Dota then have that problem as well, where you get good enough that you're like, okay, now I got to be doing this, or is it all just kind of you just keep perfecting the base game and
Dota has so there's farming, positioning, map sense or map awareness, and team fight. And so what farming is basically, if you last hit a creep, you get money for it. And money is how you win the game, because you get items, they make you way stronger. So you see the creep's like health sliver thing is down to a certain level, you have to hit it and kill it. And if you miss it, then it's bad. Also, your enemy can see its health slivers down there. They can hit their own creep and kill it and deny you the money. Which, if you think about in reality, is kind of morbid. Of you have you're in this battlefield, right? And you have your two heroes are there. And then your hero cuts off your head because he doesn't want your enemy getting the money. Also, they only get half the XP if there's a deny, so you're also taking away their XP. So there's this.
Is it just more of a matter of learning all the little techniques rather?
Well, so there's learning the little techniques. So there's doing that. So it's learning how to farm and lane. But then you could be amazing. I always get the last hits. And then you could be playing against someone playing Monkey King. And this person's really good in lane at harassing. And so it's I'm amazing at getting these last hits. I'm the best in the world. But this jerk keeps hitting me. And if I get hit too much, I'll die and then I'll lose out on these last hits. And so then you have to learn, sure, I can last hit these creeps perfectly, but I have to adjust my positioning so this guy can no longer do that. So there's there's the micro game, and there's a slightly bigger game. Then there's the bigger game of awareness of the map of, I'm here with my support. So there's two of us here and there's two of them here. And then you look at the mini map and you're like, wait a minute, I don't see any of the enemy heroes. And then all five of them suddenly show up in your lane. And so there's the bigger strategy of, all right, everyone, we're going to go bottom. We're going to kill their carry because their carry is the most important thing in the game. So if we get rid of them, so there's this bigger map sense. So there's these little strategies, these big strategies.
But it sounds like these are skills that players would have and try to do to the best of their ability at all levels of play.
Yes.
So you never get to this dip where it's oh, now I have to do this extra thing that's annoying. Well, maybe last hits.
Last hits, there's polling, which is another thing, which is this whole other stuff, which is you mess up how waves move by... But there's neutral creeps and...
if you liked Dota at, I don't know what they do, bronze rank, let's say. I don't know what they call them. But do you have to change your joy at a higher rank, or can you keep doing the same stuff but better?
No. You can't.
You have to change what you were doing?
Yeah, so I actually really enjoy low-skilled games. Herald's the lowest skill, and people call it Herald gaming. It's hilarious to watch. And it's fun to play in as well. Because these are people who don't understand these mechanics. And so, a pair of brown boots. They're your movement speed item. Two of them doesn't do anything. But you only see one brown boot in an image. And so people will buy two brown boots because it makes sense. And it's plus 40 move speed. And so when I first started playing... I really like this hero called Phantom Assassin. Now, she has evasion, so if you hit her, you have a chance to miss. She has 50% evasion. She's a nightmare to play against. There's an item called Butterfly. It's a sword that gives you 35% evasion. I thought, I put this sword on her. I'm going to get 85% evasion. I'm not going to be touchable. And then I buy a fairy trinket. That'll give me another 10.
And you're untouchable.
Yeah, I'll be untouchable. So how it actually works is she has her 60% evasion, 50%. Then the sword adds 35% onto that 50%. So it's a diminishing return.
Right.
But I had that in my head. That's how that game works. So at the lower levels, there's you have these misconceptional game, a different way of playing. Or there's a hero at the mid-range level. It's I build this on this hero, I build this on this hero, and then I win. At low range, it's that meme of it shows the derpy person, and it's I do this, then there's the bell curve, and that shows the brilliant person. They're doing the same thing as the derpy person.
Yeah.
Dota plays like that. So derpy person's I built Dagon on Ogre Magi, so that's the item in a hero. And it's really good. And then it goes up, it's on Ogre Magi I have to get this support item, this support item, this support item.
What does it mean to build Dagon on Ogre Magi? What are all those words meaning?
So building Dagons, you buy So items have components. So you have like the Orb of Power.
So Dagon is like a combination artifact?
Yeah, so you have the Orb of Power and the Stick of Destiny. You put them together, you get Dagon.
Okay, so when you're saying I build Dagon on Ogre Magi, you're saying I'm getting the component pieces for this artifact, giving them both to the same hero, and now he has an even better artifact that does like 3 things instead of 2 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what that means.
Okay.
So, and then the pros, like I build or I get the component pieces to make Dagon on Ogre Magi.
Right.
And so at the pro level, like the really, really
and
high
why
pro
is
level,
is that just 2 random things you chose, or is that a silly thing for a reason?
that's just 2 random things.
Okay.
It kind of works. Ogre Magi, has his ultimate is called Dumb Luck, and if he casts a spell or uses an item, he has a chance of it being cast again on a different target. And Dagon shoots a laser that deals 800 damage.
So you have a chance to shoot a bunch of incredibly high damage things.
Lasers at multiple targets.
But it's like really low or something, or?
There's just better items for him to have.
Okay.
Like the actual thing is, there's an item called Midas, Hand of Midas. And you point at a creep, the creep dies instantly, gets turned into golden experience, worth more than you would get for last hitting it, and has a cooldown.
Right.
And so Ogre can multicast that onto multiple targets. And so it increases your economy, but you have to pay for it in the first place. So people are tempted to build on Ogre because they can multicast it. But Ogre is not a good item on Ogre. He would rather have other items.
So the problem with high-level play in Dota is that you become trapped in build orders rather than just getting to goof around and do what you want. Like
mid-level player, I'd say. High level, they can sort of goof around again.
But you get to this point where it's like, if I don't always give Ogre Magi Midas, then I'm basically just handing the game away to the other team.
Yes.
And so then it sucks because it's like, I already know what I'm going to do before the game started.
Yeah.
And in Age of Empires, that would be, I'm going to push deer, I'm going to pull boars, I'm going to put 3 on wood and 5 on stone.
Yeah.
That's the best build order. Dark Age, 5 on stone, 1 on sheep. Flawless. Wins every time. But that's the thing, like, what if I want to build a bunch of, like, okay, because what I would love in Age of Empires, and it works on a very low level, but, like, everyone on wood, I'm just going to palisade my enemy in right off the bat, and and maybe you catch someone off guard in a game because you're like, that was so stupid, I didn't plan for it. But I want that to be every game, right? And I feel like in Smash Bros, you can kind of get away with that, like, I'm going to do the crazy thing every time.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's some fundamentals. Like, okay, do not get grabbed by Luigi. You know, stuff like that. But I think the curve tends to be a lot...
Yeah.
There's less, like, trappedness in it. But
and so one of the problems with Dota, on top of that, though, so Smash Bros, unless you're playing team games, I mean, professional team games is just a joke in and of itself.
Yeah.
But in Dota... Actually, that's the same thing with Age of Empires, even to a certain extent, is there is team games, but it's mostly solo.
Yeah.
And there's another thing is there's the Arabia meta. Everyone plays Arabia.
Yeah.
But then
there's a whole other game.
You play Black Forest against someone who's like way lower elo than you, but they're a Black Forest nerd. They're going to wipe the floor with you.
Yeah.
So Dota has very few custom game modes. Like, it has custom game modes, but in the actual client instead of the mods, there's a limited amount of custom game modes. Everyone's basically playing ranked or unranked. And it's a team play with 4 other people against a team of 5 other people.
And there's just one map.
There's just one map, and it leads to an environment because you're not going into the changing room afterwards and slapping the bum of that person. That, you know, on a sports team how there's that one guy's like, you could have done that. Ugh! Like, they just have that reaction to you failing to get the ball in the hoop wherever because you messed up in one moment.
You like... I felt the anger coming off of you right there. Like, you should be an actor. It's like, jeez.
Every one of your teammates is that person.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're a completely random stranger who you're not slapping the butt off when you go into the change room.
Yeah. We had...
And so even playing with people you know, if you're not doing a LAN party, it's still like they have the more resentment towards you. Because if it's a LAN party, right? Let's say... I'm playing with these people who are way better than me. So I'm playing with Romney, I'm playing with ZQ, I'm playing with Pursuant Spy, and I'm playing with Timberhearth. There's like a group I play with. So we're all playing just at random. I'm the worst player on the team. Pursuant Spy is the biggest idiot on our team, but he's better than me. So they get jokingly mad at him.
Yeah.
But they get frustrated with me. Like, I actually cannot play in lane with Romney because we do not mesh together in that game with our
Because you're
play
holding
style.
them back or something.
I'm holding him back. He also wants to micromanage me, but I don't respect Romney enough to let him micromanage me. Like, I know he's better than me in the game. He's obviously way better than me, but I have this inherent thing of, it's not respect. We grew up together, and so, like, if he's trying to control me or micromanage me, it's like, I'm not doing what you're saying.
But even then, if you'd never met him before and he's the best player in the game, it's like, I came here to play, not for you to play two characters, right?
Yeah, and so, like, when I play with someone else...
Nobody likes being micromanaged.
I'm playing with someone else who's worse than me. But they're like, all right, go with this guy.
Except those freaks that are into it.
And they're like, go on this guy. But they're only doing that in that instance where they see the opportunity instead of, like, try and manage every single thing. So I just can't play with Romney. But anyways, so we're not... we all know each other. But, like, they get kind of mad at me and they have their all different actions. Now, we're all playing LAN together, and one of them's, like, just mouthing me off. I can suddenly stand up like a thundercloud and loom over them. My physical presence is there. And I don't even have to do that, but they know that I can do that now. And so us being together, there's not going to be that dynamic. So that's among a bunch of close friends. So most
the problem
Dota,
is just, like, strangers where you just...
Most Dota is absolute strangers who are completely different. And so there's a joke that Dota is currently toxic, and same with League. And it's because it's 5 strangers playing completely randomly.
Isn't there a synapse that fires and says, if my logical conclusion that I come to is to be toxic online because I'm an anonymous, that means that this will be the same conclusion everyone else comes to? Because, like, Kant's whole moral imperative was that an alien life form would have to say, I want other beings to be moral, and therefore I need to adapt a system that means that an independent intelligence would think of it as well and create the best possible universe.
Have you ever been in a car with open driving?
Maybe not, but well, it's just one of those, like, come on, you do this.
Yeah, everyone's an idiot.
Yeah, but
like, even in cars, like, everyone who else is an idiot.
But I don't think of people that way when I'm driving a car.
Yeah, there's the few, like, your friend who does computer game stuff. Playing Smash with her is, like, completely different experience.
She's, like, complimenting you the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, there are those outliers who are like that, and there are those people like that in Dota too.
Well, you know what I'm like? I've been watching a lot of T90, so I see this, where he says, like, he was casting in someone playing Wall, the guy that just walls people in, and he was saying, look, this is totally stupid what he's doing, but keep in mind, this is what his opponent sees, right? And his opponent walks out of his base, and he's surrounded by walls, and he thinks, this guy knows something I don't. And now his opponent's scared because he's like, this guy is so good. He can waste time walling me in. And so that's me in life, basically. I'm like, that driver swerved into my lane. I'm an idiot. I should have seen that coming. This guy knows to swerve. Like, he knew what he's doing.
Also, knows something I don't. There's a thing that...
Or, like, if I'm getting tailgated, I'm like, oh, I must be driving too slow.
There's a thing that Viper does, which is if he has the opportunity, he'll palisade wall in your mill or your lumber camp, because then your villagers can no longer drop off resources. And so it's like, you wouldn't think of that in a normal game, but he has the confidence of, he can manage his base, he can fight a battle, he can palisade wall in your base, do those all at once.
Well, there's more than that. Zero pointed this out. It was a game between, it's been so long since I've really been watching Smash Bros, but it was the Game & Watch main and the best player on Earth.
MK Leo?
MK Leo. It was a game between them. And Zero was watching them play. They're both Mexican. They're number 1 and number 2. And he was saying the Game & Watch player is actually playing way better today. Like, MK Leo's off today.
Yeah.
But he keeps dropping everything because whenever MK Leo makes a mistake, he thinks this is the best player in the world. He's doing something, and so he falls back. And so Zero was saying there's actually an advantage to being the best player. Because no matter what you do, people are going to be respecting it, and they're going to be trying to avoid it. Even if it's complete nonsense.
That's even the thing with Hidden Cup, which is so great about, is you're playing in it, and you're going against someone, and you just see their name. It's like, I'm playing against Joan of Arc. And you're like, is that person Doubt? Like, I can beat Doubt. He's good. I can beat him. But maybe that's the Viper, or maybe that's Hera.
And maybe they're doing something brilliant. Yeah. I got it.
And then you're just playing against, like, the lowest of the top 100, who's just, like, got seeded in by chance.
Yeah, and it...
and so something that I think it was Doubt did one game, and he recorded this. It came out afterwards, but he was sitting there and just like, all right, I'm going to play this game against this, like this set against the person. I'm going to pretend I'm the Viper the whole time. And so he switched from his German accent to speaking in a Norwegian accent while he's playing, like doing a stream record. And Doubt just
I think
pretended
he's
to...
Swedish, right? The Viper? Anyways, yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't
but
matter.
anyways, Doubt basically is like, I'm going to pretend to be the Viper. I'm going to pick the color yellow to throw them off because Viper always plays yellow. A bunch of people do that. So, like, people in Handcuffed, they'll pick yellow so that people think, am I playing against the Viper? Of course, the Viper picks green because he's just going to change things up. But it's that whole mentality of like, oh no, I'm playing against the Viper. This person's playing like the Viper. Then Viper will go, okay, I know who I'm playing against is not Hera. And I'm pretty certain I can beat them. So I'm going to give a nice show to T90, and I'm going to pretend to be like this Chinese pro, and I'm going to play like a Chinese pro. And so then the person's like, am I playing against Lynx? This is really weird. And then they get beat, and it's like, I'm certain Lynx is the one who beat me. And it's like, no, it's the Viper.
That's amazing. It doesn't look like Age of Empires would have enough room for personality in it. That's really neat. Because I know Movie Battles does, the mod for Jedi Knight Academy, where the people have been playing together for 30 years. And so they'll like fake other people's styles to throw them off and stuff. Like,
no, there's a huge amount of personality in the pro scene, the top 100.
It's interesting that you can express it though through the gameplay, because it seems like you just got these little men that build houses.
Yeah.
But
well, one of the things you look for to try to figure out if it's the Viper, so it's Vivi and the Viper. So Vivi, if their archers are doing things that archers shouldn't be able to do with micromanage combat, like let's say you have 10 archers, you have 20 archers and Vivi has 10, so you should win that fight. And Vivi ends up with 7 archers left over, and your whole army's dead. It's like, all right, I'm playing against Vivi.
And if they seem to be controlling every single one of their units simultaneously, independently, that's the Viper.
No, that's Vivi.
Oh, yeah.
Viper. How you know it's the Viper is you do a raid. So you have your 5 scouts, your 3 spearmen. You're going in for a raid, and not only do you not kill any villagers, but also you're now trapped against the tree line, and he's building a tower to kill your whole army. Or he's not going to even build a tower, because it's better for him to have you waste your population space with this army that's now useless because it's trapped in house walls. Because that's the sort of thing Viper will do is, if you attack him, he'll go, alright, welcome to my base. It is actually a trap, and he'll trap you inside his base. And that's like, okay, that is ungodly villager micro that's doing things that the game did not intend. That's the Viper.
I think no one in the pro scene would like this, right? But I was thinking, the update I'd like to see most of Age of Empires would be, okay, everyone has an opening that's basically the same at this point. So just don't start with sheep, start with 200 food. And don't start with boars, just start with another 150 or whatever. But beyond that, every time you give a unit an order, its effectiveness goes down by 10%. Make it sort of logistical. Like, you have to click on just your opponent's base and...
just to stop the micro battles?
I just don't want micro. I don't... Because it wasn't... Like, the original game had slow music. The gameplay was incredibly slow. The game is now played on 1.7 times speed.
Yeah.
But you had these little villagers. They're like... Dun, dun, dun. And then they'd... Rabunden, woodchopper, tuk, tuk. It was a very slow game. And it was peaceful. And you built a little base. And then you built a nice little pretty army with a bunch of different units. And you sent them walking. You clicked on your opponent's base and you let them go be free. And then you focus back on your base.
And then a bunch of men in blue cloaks murder your whole army and demolish your base. And you're like, these are the strongest units in the game.
Yeah. And that's how it should be.
And the Teutonic Knight is considered one of the worst elites in the game because of its move speed.
Yeah, but
the original design was the slow, unstoppable force.
Yeah, and now you got Boyars, which are like Teutonic Knights, but fast and stronger. And how's that fair?
Well, they're faster unless the Teutonic Knights are in a ram.
Or now a siege tower.
Yes.
But no, I really think an RTS where it took into account supply chains and logistics, where you could build like a supply chain, maybe like the trade cart it could be, and so that would reset your effectiveness level. But you would have to. But if you give an order, the unit effectiveness goes down. It would to simulate like your further field, so the general test is.
You would hate Company of Heroes, and
there's a game called Line War, which is like an RTS where you just draw lines and your units move painstakingly slow along the lines.
Yeah, no, but you would hate. There's also a Viking RTS.
Yeah.
And why I'm saying you'd hate both these is they're pure micro. So you have small units, and it's basically it strips out the base building. And it's just pure micro.
Ruins the whole point of the genre.
And like there's ability buttons and stuff for all the things.
It's actually why I don't like Command and Conquer. Because Command and Conquer, it kind of just automatically spews out units, and like you have places where you stick your stuff down.
You know, the thing that Age of Mythology did, and they've incorporated slightly into Age of Empires, which is like every other RTS, in my opinion, fails at this, especially StarCraft and Warcraft, is they have the ability buttons, whereas the mythical units had a bar, and their first attack, they would use their special, and then they'd proceed to normal attacking until it recharged, and then they'd use their special again. As automatic, and you didn't have to micro that.
Yeah.
That is how special abilities in RTSs should be for units.
Yeah. Yeah, except the one mistake Mythology made was the god powers, I guess, there.
No, the god powers, you use them once and then they're gone. They're a change of the battle. It's not micro. That is literally kingdom management. Those god powers are, when do I choose to use them?
Right, but when do you choose to use them? It's awful.
Well, I'll tell you.
You play Atlanteans. That's what you do.
No. So, I was playing against... This was ages ago. I was playing against Romney. And he had a way bigger army than mine. I was playing Atlanteans. He was playing Egypt. So he had this way bigger army there. And he sent his army versus mine. And he basically, whenever he got his god power, he used them right away. So this was like a huge battle. It was right outside his base. I cast bronze armor on my army. Then implosion. Just on the battlefield. And so all my units survived with half health. His army was wiped out. Then my forces took down his base.
Yeah.
And so it's like at a pivotal moment, you have to use the god powers.
There's the reason I always played Hades was because...
he had a bunch of passive selections.
Because his powers were all stuff like, here's a Vittoria, basically.
Yeah.
Here's a building that just generates resources for you.
Here are
forever.
the stone archers around your base.
Like, it was all stuff that it stayed forever. Not like a lightning bolt. You use it once to kill any unit in the game.
Turn your pharaoh into the son of Ra so he could shoot lightning.
Yeah, I like those sort of things. I have to go, I just realized. So
yeah.
I'll have to wrap it up there. Yeah, okay.
Later, nerds.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you call them nerds. No. I had a guy once when I was in school. He's like, we're all nerds here, right? I was like, how dare you?
I am a Chad. Thank you very much.
I don't... I think a nerd is someone who is so obsessed, like, in my mind, so obsessed with something, they forget that other people don't want to hear them yammer in jargon. It doesn't mean that you can't share a passion, but you don't use jargon when you do it. Yeah. Okay, anyways. Bye.
Later.